Welcome to Poker Fraud Alert Radio. This episode aired on February 9th, 2025. This is part 2. Part 1 was already posted up in the archives. And what I did is I put the more timely subjects in the first part. So everything you heard in the first part was not necessarily in order. I just edited it around. So the stuff you'd want to hear that would be kind of stale if too much time passed, I put in that episode. And this one has more stuff that's just kind of general, and it doesn't really matter when you listen to it. So even though this is being posted about a week and a half later after airtime, because we already posted part 1 several days ago, you'll find the topics here are ones that are not really hurt by that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the portion of the agenda that covers the topics that we are going to have in this part 2 only, and everything that was in part 1 is not going to be in this agenda. If you want to hear the full agenda as was actually aired live, you can just go listen to part 1, and that is there as well. So here again is the agenda from part 1, only the portions which apply to part 2, if you can understand that, and then we will get going with the show. Remember stevesbets, aka Steve Jacobs, a former prolific online poker player from the 2000s who was well known on PokerStars for tilting off in chat very angrily when things wouldn't go well. We covered him on a fairly recent show where we talked about controversy he was in with a well-known sports bettor named Spanky. And I think this is back in the summer of 2024, so it was kind of recent, but not all that recent. Anyway, we have an update on that story, and I will tell you it does not look that good for Steve Jacobs, and I will cover that all in the segment that gives you that update. Leon Tsoukernik, the controversial owner of King's Casino, or should I say former owner, and the King Lounge at the WSOP, also the owner of that, the high-limit room there during the World Series of Poker, almost died Michael Jackson style when he was getting propofol administered to him to fall asleep. Don't do that. If you have a lot of money, don't do that. Even if you like propofol, don't use it to fall asleep. Did not end well for Michael Jackson, and Leon Tsoukernik almost died at age 51 from doing just that, but he did survive. I'll tell you about that whole ridiculous story. Las Vegas was surprisingly empty during Super Bowl weekend, and I know it's still going on. We're just about to get into Super Bowl Sunday as I'm recording this. But the question is why? Why would Vegas be empty during Super Bowl weekend? That's usually a very busy time there. Now, yes, the Super Bowl was actually in Vegas last year, whereas this year it's not. But last year was the only year it's ever been in Vegas. All other years, Super Bowl weekend has been a very nice weekend for Vegas as far as the casinos making money and being full. And this year it's empty, and they had to lower the room rates down very low. In fact, it was the cheapest weekend of the year to stay in Vegas. You'd never guess that, right? So why was that? Well, they're still trying to figure it out, but some people on social media are trying to take a guess at it, and I will tell you what I think when we get to that segment. Major League Baseball umpire Pat Hoberg was fired for sharing a gambling account with a poker pro, an unnamed poker pro. I don't know who it is yet. But he has been fired for that, and also games were bet on baseball with that account, which is very bad, including some games which Hoberg umpired. We covered before, I mean, there's probably a lot of these stories you've heard on this show, but one of them was about two women who brought a Spanish-speaking tourist to his room. They went with him back to his room and robbed and murdered him. Two young women. And they were arrested, and they have been sentenced, but you will not believe how short the sentence is, even though they pled guilty to the murder. Miscarriage of justice, in my opinion. I'll tell you about that. Speaking of Caesars, they are likely to massively downgrade the 4 free drink benefit from Las Vegas properties for Diamond Plus and Diamond Elite members starting on February 10th. At the moment, right now it's February 9th, you can go to any Caesars outlet and get 4 drinks, even prepackaged drinks like Naked Juice or Tropicana Orange Juice or something like that. Or you can get 4 drinks at Starbucks or at Giada's Pronto little quickie outlet there, or the casino bars. There's a lot of places you can use these 4 free drinks, which you get if you're Diamond Plus or higher at Caesars. And this has been a headache for them. I covered this last year. I told you a rumor that this would be gone in 2025. Then I was asking about it in late January, and I was being told, no, that's not happening. It's not disappearing. And just as I felt that there was thick egg on my face, turned out I was right. Turned out my information was right. Well, not 100% because it hasn't happened yet, but it has not been announced officially, but it is believed that starting on February 10th, that it's going to change. There's going to be a massive downgrade for Diamond Plus and Diamond Elite members, so I will tell you about that. Then a Caesars fail story. We always have those to present you. Caesars had an enticing 10 times tier credit promo, their first one I think they've ever had, in January 2025 in the Vegas market. And those that earned a higher status thanks to that promo, well, the good news was they got their multiplied credits a lot faster than was told. They were told it would be up to 14 days, and they got it within like 3. So that's the good news. The bad news is Caesars messed up, and they did not get the right status that they earned. So I will tell you about that. Speaking of that, I have updated my guide on Poker Fraud Alert regarding earning Diamond and 7 stars as cheaply as possible at all the different Caesars properties in the country. I'll tell you where to find it and why it's useful. That's been something I've had on the site for about 9 years, but it needs updating every so often, so I took the time and updated it a few days ago, and I'll tell you how to find it and how to use it. You think that's all we have to talk about? No. We have so much more. The Commerce Casino has closed all of its safe deposit boxes, being the last card room in LA to do so. They were the last man standing with safe deposit boxes as far as LA card rooms, and now there are none. And then there were none. So I'll tell you about what is going on with that and why Commerce closed it. Kenny Chesney will be the first country music star who has a residency in the Sphere in Las Vegas. It's going to start in mid-May of this year. I saw Kenny Chesney in concert in 2001. I'll tell you a little bit about that story. And we're also going to discuss whether or not Kenny Chesney is gay. And you may say, come on, Druff, who cares about that? This is 2025. Live and let live. And I say, no, I don't care if he's gay. He says he's not, and that's why it's interesting. If he said, hey, I'm gay, it wouldn't really matter to me. But it's the fact that he has denied for 2 decades that he's gay, yet he might be. So I'm going to present the facts to you, and then you can decide for yourself whether you think Kenny Chesney is gay. It's something that I can kind of go either way on, but we'll discuss that when we get to that segment. Is that the last segment? No. We have another one. The CNF fee, or concessions fee, you'll sometimes see at certain Las Vegas restaurants on the Strip. Not all of them, but you'll sometimes see it, and you may assume it's a tax. You may assume it's like a Vegas city tax or something, and you just have to pay it like you have to pay tax. Well, no. You can actually take it off. You can legally refuse to pay it, and the restaurants will take it off pretty easily without arguing with you. So I'll explain what that is, which restaurants are doing it, and how to get it off. Finally, final topic. Longtime Las Vegas comedian Cook E Jarr. Cook E Jarr. No, that's not his birth name, but that's what he went by. Cook E Jarr has died, not because he couldn't open himself anymore, but because he was 73 years old and he died. So I'll tell you about it. Cook E Jarr and his long history in Las Vegas and what type of show it was. And no, I never got to see it, and I kind of regret it. Let's talk now about Steve Jacobs, who was known in the 2000s on PokerStars as stevesbets. And we've talked about stevesbets before. I got an email some years ago from Steve Jacobs, and he asked if I would like to appear on his new gambling-centric podcast and talk about some things, and I did. I talked about the Mike Postle situation. And he said he enjoyed me on the show. He then also said later on that he listened to Poker Fraud Alert Radio, and he was enjoying that. And he told me he was a semi-regular listener at that point. I don't know if he still listens, but I do know that he was listening for some time, and that I was also on his new podcast at the time. He and I were never friends, and some people erroneously believed we were because I had appeared on his podcast, and we were both fairly known poker players on PokerStars around the same time. So someone thought, not just someone, a number of people thought on Twitter that me and him were buddies. And we weren't. We were just acquaintances. I didn't have any problem with him. But we were never friends, and we were, of course, never enemies. And I had gotten an email from him that was asking me for some help involving his account at DraftKings. And then I didn't respond to the last email in that chain, so I never got to figure out what this was about. This was between October 2023 and March 2024. And then I was kind of alarmed when a few months after that, in June 2024, this story came out about stevesbets, which was very accusatory and was claiming that he basically had stolen a lot of money in a sports betting bearding scheme. So we covered this before, but I'm going to tell you again what this is all about, and then I'll give you the update and play you a video of stevesbets, a.k.a. Steve Jacobs, appearing in court. So his podcast I was on, if you want to go find it, it's called The Bettor's Verdict. In the 2000s, he was well known online for his crazy outbursts in the PokerStars chats when he would lose. In March of 2024, a lawsuit was filed in federal court against DraftKings, and it was filed on behalf of a John Doe, which is an anonymous plaintiff, and the attorney for that plaintiff was Stephen Jacobs. And basically it was saying that DraftKings gave out John Doe's real information to an influential gambling figure in the sports betting world named Spanky. And Spanky then took that personal information and threatened John Doe that he would use DraftKings to find him, and then did find him that way. It was alleged in that lawsuit. So basically, Stephen Jacobs was representing this John Doe, this anonymous person who got threatened by Spanky, who got his information, who got the personal information of John Doe from his connections at DraftKings. That's what was alleged there. But then it turned out that John Doe was also Stephen Jacobs. It was Stephen Jacobs representing Stephen Jacobs. Spanky, his real name is Gadoon Kairolos, and he's one of the best-known modern professional sports bettors, and he has a large Twitter following. It was alleged in this lawsuit that Spanky had an associate named Oscar Jones, and Oscar Jones ended up filing his own lawsuit against Stephen Jacobs over this same matter, basically that Jacobs stiffed him out of a lot of money because the money that was alleged to have disappeared was actually in Oscar Jones's name, which many believe actually came from Spanky. And Oscar Jones has contacted me and given his side of the story, by the way. But Oscar Jones, who I didn't know before any of this, alleged in the lawsuit that he was funding Steve Jacobs' DraftKings account. And basically this was a sports betting bearding operation. Bearding, as I said in the intro to the show, is where a losing sports bettor who has high limits because he's losing then has bets fed to him by winning sports bettors who know what they're doing, and then they win all kinds of money before it's figured out that this losing sports betting degenerate is now getting sharp picks from people who know what they're doing. And then basically what's happening is the losing sports bettor, by doing this for them, gets a piece of the winnings and doesn't risk any of his own money. And the professional sports bettors, what they get out of it is they get these high limits to place bets that otherwise they wouldn't be able to place. Because you can't just bet anything at any time. The sports book has to take your action. And this allows the action to be taken at high stakes if it's believed the action is coming from a losing bettor. So in this case, it is alleged that Steve Jacobs was the losing degenerate gambler, and that Spanky was actually posting his plays through Jacobs. Jacobs was betting whatever Spanky told him to bet, and that the person who was funding the account, an associate of Spanky's named Oscar Jones, and that Jones alleged that Jacobs never paid him, even though this whole operation was successful. Jones also alleged that Jacobs filed a false complaint to the New York Gaming Commission when he claimed that the money wasn't gone, it was just stuck. Because basically Jones wasn't getting paid and was saying, hey, where's my money? And allegedly Jacobs said back, oh, no, it's just stuck. DraftKings has frozen the money. So, don't worry, I'm filing a complaint to the New York Gaming Commission to get it unfrozen. And then he showed Jones the complaint. But then in reality, Jacobs had sent a follow-up email minutes later saying, disregard the complaint, it was sent in error. And of course didn't share that with Jones. So Jones theorizes that Jacobs did this in order to make it appear he filed a real complaint to stall Jones regarding getting the money that had already been stolen and or gambled away. So weirdly enough, even though it seemed like Jones had the goods here, and by the way, there's a good chance that maybe Jones got the money from Spanky in the first place, and the reason Jones was involved was because if Spanky was funding the account, that DraftKings might figure out something was going on here, because Spanky is well known and Jones was not. So if they see Spanky, a.k.a. Gadoon Kyrolos, funding the account, they may say, this is bearding. Nope, not happening. But if Oscar Jones, who wasn't known to anybody, funds the account, they're not going to really suspect anything. Anyway, that's the theory here. It's not proven. It doesn't really matter, though. Sports betting bearding is legal. So if this scheme was going on, there's nothing illegal about it, civilly or criminally. So the sports book can cut you off for it, but there's nothing further they can do. The problem here is it's alleged that Jacobs just made off with all the money instead of paying out the amount that he needed to Jones, who had funded this operation. So not only did Jones lose the lawsuit, but he also lost a countersuit filed by Jacobs as well. That was because Jacobs had Jones sign an agreement at some point during the whole dispute not to sue. And Jones claims that he was legally browbeaten into signing it, with Jacobs threatening to ruin him through the legal system. But the court determined that regardless of that, Jones did sign an agreement never to sue over the matter and agreed to a $250,000 penalty if he does so. And then when Jones did sue against the agreement, that did make him responsible for $250,000, and the court determined that not only was the case against Jacobs dismissed, but Jones now owed Jacobs another $250,000, which, if that's really what happened, is very unfair. Spanky made a long statement about this that I had read on the show back in June. I won't bother to read it to you. If you want to find it, you can look on June 25th on Spanky's Twitter, which is @Spanky, or you can just go to Poker Fraud Alert's Scam, Scandals, and Shadiness forum and find the thread about this, and you can find it right in there. So that's where it stood for the moment, and Oscar Jones owed $250K to Jacobs over this, amazingly, even though it did seem, from the way this all came off, that Jacobs had stolen the money from the DraftKings account and submitted a fake complaint to the New York Gaming Commission to stall Jones to make it look like the money was frozen when it really wasn't. Again, Jacobs emailed me kind of around that time period telling me he needs some help with the DraftKings matter, but then, due to my own fault with not responding to him one of the times, the conversation died, so I never found out what it was about. It'd be interesting if it was about that. But that's my only involvement in the whole thing, which is like zero. And everybody knows that. It was just there's some confusion at the time because I had been on Jacob's show, and I have clarified that since. Anyway, I'm going to play you an appearance that Jacobs made at the New York Supreme Court, because this got taken up to the New York Supreme Court to overrule the lower court that Jones' lawsuit was dismissed and that he owed $250K as a result of the countersuit. So here are the judges at the New York Supreme Court debating back and forth with Jacobs about this. And I'll be honest here, Jacobs doesn't come off very well.
May it please the court, I'm defendant respondent Stephen Jacobs. I want to pick up on Your Honor's question right there. There is a great deal of evidence in the record that the relationship was extraordinarily hostile for a whole host of reasons at the time that his client signed the release.
You say this like it benefits you.
That's the judge.
Well,
And what I want to
judges.
know is, since when is it appropriate for an attorney in a fiduciary relationship to lie to his partner?
Your Honor.
Answer my question.
Of course, Your Honor. It's not appropriate. This was an extraordinary.
And there's no question that is precisely what you did.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Understood, Your Honor. It is. You're correct that it is inappropriate to lie. Although I would dispute that I had any fiduciary duties.
Okay, so this already sounds really bad. He's admitting to the New York Supreme Court that he lied to Oscar Jones in their financial relationship. So he's like, yeah, I agree it was inappropriate to lie. Notice he's not saying, I didn't lie to Mr. Jones. He's admitting he lied here. So what could possibly be his defense? And by the way, he's defending himself here, which wasn't that smart. But even if you're a great lawyer, you should always hire somebody else to defend you. But let's go on here and listen to what he says after that.
To Mr. Jones, as an initial matter, there's no...
From the inception of this arrangement, you had no fiduciary relationship with this person?
Well, I don't think there's anything...
You take $82,000 of his money to file bets, and there's no fiduciary relationship?
Yes, he was trying to say he's disputing that they had a fiduciary relationship, and the judge, or one of the judges at the Supreme Court says, you're disputing that you had a fiduciary relationship when you take $82,000 from him to place bets? So then listen to what he says.
Maybe at a certain point there was.
At what point?
If the record were exactly as he said.
No, I'm asking you. You're part of the record. So at what point did you have a fiduciary responsibility?
Yes, Your Honor. If Mr. Jones had given me money to do something in particular with it, then yes, I agree there would be fiduciary obligations. Although the relationship he alleges is akin to a stockbroker relationship, and I believe there's law in this department.
You're not a stockbroker.
Well,
you're not a licensed stockbroker, so that doesn't apply. Please.
Well, that's the end of that. He's like, well, yeah, there was kind of a fiduciary relationship, but it was kind of more like a stockbroker and client. And she's like, yeah, you're not a stockbroker, so this doesn't apply. Like, what do you mean there's law having to do with stockbrokers? You're not a stockbroker. You don't have a license as a stockbroker. Why are you bringing that into it? He just kind of abandons that and goes on.
Okay. But I would like to just add that the Centro and the law in this department since Centro are very clear that you can still release, even if there are fiduciary obligations, they can be released so long as the relationship is not one of unquestioning trust, because without that, the settlement of disputes would be impossible.
But you...
That's a different judge.
You do not dispute that you told Mr. Jones, please sign the release, and as a condition for signing the release, no, you can trust me that I will be filing a complaint with the Gaming Commission so that we can get that $200,000 I believe I owe you. Yes or no?
No, Your Honor. That is not...
I thought the threat was that either you sign this release or I will withdraw the complaint that I filed with the commission and you'll never see that money.
Well, that's what he claims the threat was. The actual text messages of that day are extremely different than what he presented. But I agree, Your Honor, that is what the threat that he puts in his complaint. Mm-hmm. But I think the law is clear.
But that was an empty threat because you had already withdrawn the pretend complaint.
So you'll see as this goes on here, there's not much more to this, but you'll see as this goes on that they're saying that Oscar Jones apparently signed that release, that thing that made him lose the lower court case, promising the $250K to Jacobs if he sues, that he signed that release with the threat that if he doesn't sign it, that Jacobs is just going to withdraw the whole complaint that he had made with the Gaming Commission, when Jones didn't realize it had already been withdrawn minutes after it was made. So this judge is bringing that up and saying, wait a minute, that release he signed was based upon phony information you gave him, that there was an active complaint when you had withdrawn it right away. Isn't that true? And he's kind of dancing around and go, well, that's what he alleges, blah, blah. She's like, well, isn't that true? So you'll see he doesn't deny that fact. And then he goes on to keep quoting this Centro thing. Now, what is Centro? Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Yes, Your Honor.
So are you arguing that as a matter of public policy that this court should condone a release, right, for which was obtained because you lied to the person in order to get them to sign that release?
That's a third judge here at the Supreme Court asking a good question. Let's hear what he says back.
Well, again, that's what he contends. So, yes, Your Honor. Under
Okay.
these, but I would
he
contend.
contends it, or is that not what happened? Right? Because a part of getting the release, right, the way in which you obtained the release was by telling him that you had filed the complaint. But the record reflects that you had already retracted that complaint.
To answer Your Honor's specific question, Centro Empresarial, the Court of Appeals held just that.
Okay, so what's Centro Empresarial? You probably have no idea what he's talking about. Centro Empresarial is some kind of company, I think a Mexican company or something. It doesn't really matter what it is, but there was some kind of lawsuit involving them. I think it was a Centro Empresarial versus America Mobile, and I guess there was some kind of similar thing involving that regarding a contract that was signed under false pretenses, and it was held that even though it was signed with some things not being true, that the contract still held. And that is an interesting area of law if you think about it, that if somebody is induced to sign a contract based upon some false claims, but they know what they're signing, so there's no tricks in the contract, but the reason they're signing it is via a trick, then should the contract still hold? And that is interesting, like from a legal perspective. So he was trying to say that this Centro Empresarial case from 2010 applies to this one, and that even though he induced Oscar Jones to sign this release based upon a complaint that he had made and then withdrew minutes later, and that Jones signed it believing the complaint was still active, that Jones should still be held to the terms of this release. and somehow the lower court agreed with this, but the Supreme Court wasn't having it. So let's listen to the responses.
In that case, a party presented a totally fraudulent balance sheet that the other side relied on to sign a release. And it went to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals said, well, the real issue is you didn't realize the value of the claims you were giving up. And the reason, the policy behind this rule of the separate fraud rule is that otherwise any sort of fraud claim could never be settled with finality. So that's reason number one. And if you may indulge me, I'd like to give you the second reason in this department why releases are upheld under these circumstances. And again, there's scores of case law referenced in my brief that says when there's language in the release that says, I didn't rely on any representations outside of the release, the party claiming fraudulent inducement is forbade from claiming justifiable reliance, which is an element of fraudulent inducement.
All right.
They're not liking this. He's basically using other cases in situations that have similarity to this, which is a common tactic that's used when arguing with higher courts to uphold or overturn lower courts' decisions, basically saying this has been already established. But the problem is he's admitting that as an attorney, as a licensed attorney, that he tricked someone into signing it with a threat something's going to happen, which had already happened, but the person didn't know. And there's no getting around that if that's what he did. And he's not denying that's what he did. He's basically saying, well, look at all these other cases where other companies did this and it was upheld, it was okay. The contract's still okay. And if this isn't a direct part of the contract, and so the fraudulent inducement doesn't matter. And they're like, no. No. What you did makes the whole thing invalid. If he signed it for this reason and you tricked him into it, then we're not upholding this contract. This contract's meaningless at that point if you induced him fraudulently. So we don't care about the case law. It's not happening here. If you can guess by the way these New York Supreme Court judges were talking to him, he did not win. This ended up being overturned and sent back to the lower court to be decided again. And that is not good news for Mr. Jacobs, because really the main argument he had back has been destroyed by the higher court and cannot be used in lower court again. So that's it. He can't claim that the release that was signed gets him out of it. So he can't claim Oscar Jones owes him $350K based upon that release. He can't claim that Oscar Jones is forbidden from suing him based on that release. So now it's going back to the lower courts, where it's just going to be determined whether Jones is owed money by Jacobs. And I think it probably will be determined that he is owed the money. It is possible that they have some form of similar law to California that you can't collect gambling debts even if you were screwed. That if it's a gambling matter, you're just out of luck. But this wasn't strictly a gambling matter. It wasn't like Jones and Jacobs had a bet on a sports game and Jones just isn't paying, or Jacobs isn't paying Jones, whatever. This is a case where they had a contract that Jacobs was going to place bets using Jones's money. And if they won, that Jones was going to get a certain percentage of that, and Jones never did. And the money was apparently either gambled away or withdrawn by Jacobs. And that in order to stall him, a false complaint was made to the New York Gaming Commission about DraftKings having frozen the money when the money was never actually frozen, and the complaint was withdrawn within minutes, and Jacobs claimed, oh, this was sent in error, just disregard it. So provided that's all true, which Jacobs does not seem to be denying in front of the New York Supreme Court. You know, if all of this wasn't true, then he wouldn't say, well, Centro Empresario, blah, 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 blah. He wouldn't say that crap. He would say, no, this is not true. What Jones is alleging is false. I did not submit a phony complaint. I did not get him to sign this release based upon false information. I did not steal the money. Jones got every penny he was due. What's the problem here? That's what he would say if that were the case. But he's not saying any of these things. He's just relying on case law to try to get out of it. And if you boil this down to the very simple concept of the entire matter, without even looking at who is legally responsible for what and what contract should hold, here's the bottom line. If somebody gives you money to bet for them, and if you betting it for them entitles you to some percentage of the proceeds if it ends up being profitable, and then you just take the whole thing and don't ever give them the money that you're supposed to, because remember, it's your account, so you have control of the money, but there's an agreement where they're going to get X percentage of the money at whatever point it's deemed that you're supposed to pay it out, and it turns out that you've misappropriated those funds and stolen them, whether it's through gambling that wasn't agreed to as part of loading the accounts for these funds, or you just withdrawing it and taking it for other things. I don't know what happened to the money. But if the money's gone and was supposed to be paid, then you have stolen from that person. There is no way around it. Morally, you are a thief and you have stolen from them. And from what I can see, Steve Jacobs did steal from Oscar Jones there. And if he didn't, then why doesn't he present in court that he did not? Why doesn't he put something on social media responding to Spanky's long claims against him? Spanky has a big following. Spanky made him look terrible. And if someone made these allegations against me, like, I don't care if some troll with 12 followers writes awful stuff about me, because no one's going to see it. But Spanky's got 47,200 followers and posted this long thing about Jacobs with a picture of him with very damaging allegations that basically Jacobs stole from him. Jacobs stole $500K from him through this scheme. So if he didn't steal, why not just say so? Why not say, no, this is false, Spanky's lying, I didn't steal it, I did exactly what I promised regarding the arrangement we had, here's proof, here's receipts, Spanky's a liar, go away, goodbye. That's what you'd say. You wouldn't just let this guy trash you. Also, he could sue Spanky for defamation and probably win. But none of this is happening. Instead, he was suing DraftKings over giving out his info to Spanky, which may have happened. Who knows? Spanky's got connections. It's possible Spanky found someone at DraftKings who was sympathetic to the entire matter and said, hey, this guy scammed me out of $500,000. Can you give me his info? I won't say it was you. And then the guy's like, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, fuck him, and gave him his info. I could see that happening. I'm not saying it did happen. I'm saying I could see that happening. And this whole thing with the masked man that was in front of Jacobs' place, I don't know if that really happened. But even if it did happen, the masked man didn't beat up Jacobs. He didn't pull a gun on him. He supposedly just came there and threatened him. Well, okay, I don't even feel that bad for Jacobs. If he really stole $500,000 and the person he stole it from sends a masked man there to say, hey, better pay up or else, I don't have much sympathy for that person. So this doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good here. And so it's been kicked back to the lower court, and we'll see where that goes from there. There may be some legal issues which prevent Jones from winning much or anything here because it's a gambling matter. And maybe there is no explicit agreement that Jacobs can't bet on other things. I don't know what the agreement said. So maybe he could worm out of it that way. Maybe it's just an oral agreement that can't be proven. I don't know. Maybe there's no New York law to handle things like this. So I'm not saying this is a slam dunk for Oscar Jones. I just see that Oscar Jones will not lose the $250K, at least in that lawsuit, in the countersuit, for violating the release, because that release has already been determined to be invalid. So that's that for that argument. But the bottom line is you boil it down to the simplest matter. Steve Jacobs, if you owed Oscar Jones this money because you had promised to give it to him if the account was successful and you promised him a certain percentage and you did not pay him that percentage, you owe him that money. And the right thing to do is to arrange getting him that money. Now, I don't know if Jacobs has any money. That may be why he was representing himself at the Supreme Court. He appears to have been fired from the law firm where he was a senior partner, I believe. So he's not there anymore from what I can see. So he may not have much of a career at the moment. He may not have much of an income at the moment. So I don't know if there's any money to get out of him. But putting that aside, to me, at least from a moral standpoint, you pay what you agree. You pay what you owe. If you mess up and you take money that is not yours and you gamble it away or whatever happened to it, then you get it back to the person. You do your best to get it back to the person. At the time, Steve Jacobs was an attorney at a good law firm. I believe he was a senior partner there, probably making very good money. If he got his gambling under control, he could just say, okay, you know what? Oscar, sorry, I messed up. I will get the money back. I'm going to start paying you right away. As soon as I get my first paycheck, I'm going to start kicking money to you every month until this is all paid off. And I bet Oscar would have said, okay, fine. They wouldn't have worked with him again, but as long as a good faith effort was made to pay, I have a feeling this would have been resolved. We would have never heard about it. But trying to worm out of it through legal means and through legal threats, that's not going to fly. And it's too bad because in my interactions with Steve Jacobs, I liked him, but this looks very bad for him. First when he contacted me to be on his show, I thought, okay, cool. He became a lawyer since then. I didn't even know that. And it kind of seemed to me like he had moved on to something past poker. And that he still had an interest in gambling matters because of his past. And he wanted me on his show for that reason. So I was happy to come on. And I was even happier to hear that he listened to my show after that and liked it. Great, but you got to keep to what you promise people. If you're part of a sports betting bearding operation, then you got to pay out. You got to keep your gambling under control. You can't say, oh, look at all this money. Let me place some more bets. They'll never know. Maybe these will win. I don't know what the hell he did with the money, but it looks like Oscar Jones didn't get it, and that's a big problem to me. So all this other stuff doesn't matter to me, even if this never went to court. If these allegations are true or mostly true. And from what I can see, it looks like they are. 775-FRAUD-55, 775-372-8355. Leon Tsoukernik, remember him? He's been in some controversy. He is the former owner of the King's Casino and the King's Lounge. The King's Casino is located in the Czech Republic. The King's Lounge is temporarily located each year at the World Series of Poker and is the high-limit cash room for the World Series. I believe what they do is they rent space from the World Series of Poker and they operate there, or something along those lines. I never quite understood that deal. Leon Tsoukernik is a poker player himself. He also got into some controversy over the years. The biggest controversy he got into was attempting to welch on a $3 million heads-up loss against an Australian guy who went by Aussie Matt, basically because he wanted to save face. It wasn't because he didn't have the $3 million. He was just embarrassed that he lost the $3 million, it appeared, and he actually claimed that Aussie Matt was cheating him even though they were playing heads-up. Now, it's possible to cheat heads up using marked cards or whatever else, but there's no evidence. Tsoukernik basically said, I lost, I think I was cheated, I'm not paying, which you can't do if you're playing heads up and you lose and then you don't want to pay afterwards. This is one of these matches where they didn't put the money up front because Leon didn't have it on him, and Aussie Matt stupidly thought, well, Leon will pay me, of course, he's a casino owner, and then he learned otherwise. So this was a controversy online when it was brought public. For whatever reason, the WSOP did not drop their partnership with him over this, which they should have. And the King's Lounge persisted, and this stayed for years to come, including currently. The WSOP also has partnerships with King's Casino and has held WSOP Europe events over there. Tsoukernik did sell his part of the King's Casino, so he doesn't own any of that anymore, but he was the one who started it all. Anyway, he made a lot of money because he sold his ownership for 400 million euros, which is worth more than $400 million. So this guy is super rich. But it almost didn't matter because he almost died at the age of 51 from propofol abuse, just like another very rich individual who died that way, Michael Jackson. And in fact, the stories are very similar. Propofol, as you probably know, is used in short medical procedures such as colonoscopies. And the good thing about propofol is it's fast to administer, it's fast to come off of, it's extremely safe when administered professionally and used in its intended fashion. It's almost like a general anesthesia light. So things which before were not using general anesthesia because of the time and danger from it, now use them, like colonoscopies. If you got a colonoscopy in the 90s, you could not be put out during it. You would just be semi-sedated, and it was very unpleasant. But nowadays, you're just put out with propofol, and you don't feel any of it, and you wake up, and you recover pretty fast from it. The problem is that some people enjoy the feeling of propofol, and some also like it as a sleep aid because they love the sleep they get on it. However, it's not easy to abuse for the average person because it's not easy to obtain, and also extremely tough to find someone who's willing to administer it to you. Most medical professionals who know how to administer it would not risk their license and prison to administer it to you illegally. So basically, this is a drug for the very rich because you have to be able to afford your own personal doctor or someone else who is experienced with it who can get the propofol and is willing to administer it to you because you're compensating them so well. Now, maybe in the Czech Republic, where Leon Tsoukernik lives, that's easier to find, but in the U.S. it would be quite difficult to find someone to help you abuse propofol. So propofol deaths from abuse are not likely to occur to anyone except the very rich. Michael Jackson was a perfect example of the victim of such a thing. In fact, it gave propofol a bad name for a little time because people thought, hey, if it killed Michael Jackson, I'm afraid to use it. And you had to remind them that he was not using it for the intended purposes. So Michael Jackson had his corrupt doctor administer him propofol every night to go to sleep because Michael Jackson had sleeping problems. And it's not supposed to be used that way. So eventually one day, this killed Michael. And it almost killed Leon Tsoukernik. So here's what happened. Leon had the propofol administered to him, and it was not in a medical setting. And according to a Czech news outlet, his ending up in critical condition and close to death was the result of an unprofessional intravenous administration of a drug intended for short-term anesthesia. Tony G., who is a good friend of Leon Tsoukernik, tweeted, "I hope the rumors are not true about Leon Tsoukernik overdose on propofol. I've never heard of this drug. I hope for a call from him, and my thoughts are with all friends and family." I'm surprised Tony G. has not heard of propofol being used. It's not an obscure drug for anesthesia. If it's improperly administered, it can cause severe respiratory and cardiovascular complications. I would personally recommend, by the way, if you get propofol administered, that you have it done by a doctor, by an anesthesiologist. Nurse practitioners are allowed to do it, but they don't have the same expertise as anesthesiologists, nor do they have the expertise to do something about it if something goes wrong. So given how terrible the consequences could be if administered incorrectly, you really want a doctor doing it. So I insist it has to be done by a doctor when I get it at the colonoscopies. Anyway, it is still safe overall. I actually looked into it before getting it myself for the first time in 2021, and I saw of the propofol administered for medical purposes, I'm not talking about the abuse, that only 1 in 575,000 administrations of it resulted in death, and those were usually people with existing major medical problems, like people who were already kind of at death's door anyway. So the chance of an average healthy person dying of propofol administration is very, very low, but that's if it's administered for its intended use and by professionals, not by just some guy who you know who's willing to do it, even if it's a doctor. The police were investigating this. I don't know if they did anything about this, but it did say in the article, "We are investigating possible illegal behavior that may have occurred at an undetermined time. There was a 51-year-old unconscious man who was airlifted for medical treatment. The police commissioner has initiated criminal proceedings on suspicion of committing the particularly serious crime of grievous bodily harm. All the circumstances of the case are the subject of further investigation." So it looked like that Leon Tsoukernik was going to die from this. He was in very bad condition, and it looked like this was probably the end, or he was going to wake up very brain damaged or whatever. He was in critical condition, and Michael Jackson didn't recover from that. So what about Leon Tsoukernik, who was around the same age? Well, Leon Tsoukernik said on January 31st that he's feeling absolutely fine and feeling fantastic, even though he was in a 40-hour coma over this. He said that he felt more alive than ever after he awoke from the coma on January 17th. And the editor of the Czech publication said his vitality just oozes from him, and according to him, he feels better than before. He also said that he even had memories from things he had long forgotten. So he claims this actually benefited him. This 40-hour coma, he woke up a better man. He also thanked the doctors at the emergency room for saving his life. He said, "These wonderful people gave me a second life. led by Professor Benez. At the same time, I am deeply grateful to my wife Sandra, who spent days and nights at my bedside. I believe that played a role. So he went on to live. And maybe cheat more people heads up. Who knows? Leon Tsoukernik would not be taken down by propofol. Almost, but not quite. Vegas has been surprisingly empty during Super Bowl weekend. And that's when this show is being recorded. We're recording this right now on Super Bowl Sunday in the early morning. And you'd expect Vegas to be busy. I'm not talking about last year when the Super Bowl was actually in Vegas, but Super Bowl weekend has always been a big weekend for Vegas. People like to come to Vegas. They like to attend Super Bowl parties or watch the Super Bowl in a sports book or just bet on the Super Bowl at the sports book and then watch it in their hotel room. It's just always been a popular weekend in Vegas. And they were expecting that again in 2025. But then people started noticing some things. That hotel rooms were surprisingly cheap. You'd look about going to Vegas during Super Bowl weekend, and instead of seeing insanely high prices, you saw surprisingly low prices. And people wondered what's up here. A user named The Boz, who posts both on my Vegas Casino Talk forum, which is a sister forum to Poker Fraud Alert, and on Poker Fraud Alert itself, he posted on Vegas Casino Talk, it appears they can't give rooms away this weekend. Probably the cheapest Saturday night of the year, with rooms as low as $25 before fees. Notice that these are publicly available rates and not with a player's card or discount. Is it the expansion of sports betting everywhere or something deeper? So he's basically asking, is it possible people aren't coming out because they can bet on sports at home from apps or even local casinos now that sports betting is nationwide? It's not in every state, but it's in a lot of states now. So he shows a screenshot of various Caesars properties for Saturday night, the night before Super Bowl, showing Harrah's $25, Flamingo $39, Horseshoe $39. Now, of course, if you don't have a player's card, you'd have to pay a $50 or so resort fee on top of that, and this is before tax. But still, these are not rates for people with a player's card or people who've earned comps or people who've earned discounted rooms. No. This is open to anyone who just wants to book a room, even if you've never been to Las Vegas in your life and never had a player's card in your life. So those are dirt cheap rates for a Saturday night, no matter what time of year. But for Super Bowl Saturday night, that is crazy. And it's not just Caesars properties. Just everything was much cheaper than you'd ever guess. Vital Vegas, he was also discussing this. And he was saying that executives are pretty shocked by this whole thing. And they are trying to figure this out. Everybody was just blindsided in Vegas about the emptiness of the city during Super Bowl Sunday. He wrote, casino execs across Las Vegas are baffled and rattled by Super Bowl weekend falling off a cliff. Some are reporting losing days where expenses exceeded revenue, multiple days this week. As our fellow kids say, oof. And John Mahaffey, a Vegas journalist, he responded to this. He said, many data indicators show a notable loss in Las Vegas tourism interest in the lower and middle tiers of the market. I am bearish on those segments and neutral on the locals and luxury ones. International tourism, excluding parts of Western Europe, seem like a major weakness. So that's interesting. I can actually believe that this is true, that there is a loss of interest in coming to Las Vegas among the lower and middle tiers of the market, and that would explain why those properties are cheaper. Things like Horseshoe and Harrah's, casinos like that. The problem going on in Vegas is that it's kind of pricing out the people who just want a cheap trip there. And there's too much nickel and diming. There's too many fees. People who come to Vegas wanting value are not getting it anymore. I guess this particular weekend they could with these rates, but other than that, they're just not getting it, and they're getting frustrated with all the fees and the inflated prices. Because if you think back to old Vegas, and I don't mean really old Vegas, I mean even 90s Vegas, you think about these super cheap meals and buffets, super cheap 24-hour cafes at every casino, and all the different loss leaders there, and the cheap room rates and the cheap shows. Basically, gambling was supporting the city, and those who came and didn't gamble could still have a very cheap vacation with very good value. And then the corporations came in, and they started changing this, and then they started changing more and more and more, and pretty much the accountants took over and decided to squeeze every penny they could in the short term out of the tourists. So they didn't want anyone getting a free ride anymore. They didn't want Vegas to be a value vacation for anyone. Basically, if you weren't going to lose your money in the casino, then they wanted you to pay. So that's where all the nickel and diming came in. That's where the cheap meals went away and were replaced by everything being overpriced, even the so-called cheap restaurants in the casinos. It just became a very different vacation experience than it used to be. And yes, the lower and middle tiers were basically left out. Especially if you wanted to stay anywhere near the Strip. That was just basically impossible. So people just started getting sick of it. Also, the games were degraded. The video poker pay tables got worse and worse. The blackjack rules got worse and worse. That's why there's 6-5 blackjack almost everywhere now. The slot machine payback got worse. Just everything got worse. They just figured the gamblers don't know the difference. They just want to get lucky. They don't know about pay tables and payback and rules. They don't know all this shit. They just want to play and hit something big, so let's take advantage of that. The problem is, you can't completely clobber the tourist when he comes to gamble, because if he doesn't walk away ahead often enough, he's not going to want to come back. There's this sweet spot for gambling from the casino standpoint where people lose, but they win enough to delude themselves into believing they're not that far down and that they have a chance to win it big. That's the sweet spot. So they keep coming and you bleed them slowly. What you don't want is to wallop them every time to where it isn't that likely they're going to come back having won anything. Because if they have enough experiences like that in a row, they're just going to say, well, screw it. I never win anymore. It's depressing. It's no fun. Every time I come, I know I'm going to lose. So they leave and they don't come back. Or you annoy them with bad customer service, with nickel and diming, with hidden fees, with expensive restaurants where people don't get anywhere near the value they're expecting. So you sell them a $20 hamburger, which tastes like a $5 hamburger, things like that. So you can have high-end dining and also have low-end dining that's cheap. You can have both. You don't have to make a fortune on all of your restaurant offerings, but now they all believe they have to. There's few cheap shows anymore. Just it's become a high-end experience, and sometimes you don't even get high-end return from the experience. You're not always getting that great of an experience anyway. But because of a general rise in interest in Las Vegas and the fact that gamblers are just stupid these days and don't know what they should expect and don't understand the difference between a good and bad game, gambling revenue's been going up, so they say, we're doing better than before, so okay, we're doing everything right. But the problem is, eventually you're going to hit a ceiling, and then it's going to start going down. There's only so long you can keep doing this. There's only so long you can keep treating the tourists this way, especially the low and middle end of the market. So it is possible that this Super Bowl situation is not just an outlier. Some people are saying, there's just not as much interest in this Super Bowl. People aren't that excited because the Chiefs keep making it, and there's a belief by many people that the refereeing was rigged to basically force the Chiefs in it every time. And who cares now? We're tired of the Chiefs being crammed down our throat, and Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and Pat Mahomes. Like, people are sick of it, some say. There's also a theory, as the Boz pointed out, that people don't need to come to Vegas to bet on the Super Bowl. That they can now do it from home. So why go through all the trouble and expense to come all the way to Vegas when you can gamble just as well from your living room? Or at worst, go down the street to a local casino. I also feel that perhaps the lack of ability to watch the Super Bowl in a public venue easily has turned people off, because it's getting harder and harder to do. So first of all, if you have not been invited to a Super Bowl party at a casino, if you're not an invited guest because you play enough that they're inviting you, it's quite expensive to go to one. Listen to these prices. At the Stratosphere, I'm not going to call it the Strat, I'm still going to call it the Stratosphere. $200 minimum to attend the one at PT's. Guy Fieri at the Lake costs $200. This is all starting at $200, by the way. It's not flat rate. That's the cheapest you can get in. The Proper Eats Food Hall at Aria has a party starting at $200. Caesar Sportsbook at the Link is charging $225. So much for just walking into the sportsbook and watching it. You got to pay $225 admission to get in there. Cover Steak at Resorts World starts at $250. Beer Park at Paris is $300. Blondie's at Planet Hollywood is $325. Monte Cristo Cigar Bar at Caesar's Palace starts at $650. The only free one I see on this list is downtown Las Vegas at the Event Center is free. But I guess there are pay options there too, but it starts at $0. The Circa Stadium Swim is setting you back $125. The Plaza, $125 for their party, and Gold Spike downtown, $140. And even off-strip and away from downtown, you can't get in free. Jack's Place Bar and Grill in Boulder City is $25. At the Virgin Hotel, the Cassie Beach House is $100 minimum. And then Slater's 50/50, I don't know where that is, starts at $125. So people are just tired of this shit. People just want to watch the Super Bowl somewhere with a bunch of other football fans and cheer, and they feel they can't do it. So they feel like, why would they go all the way to Vegas and sit in a hotel room and watch by themselves unless they want to get fleeced for all this money to watch these parties? I think they are just pushing people away, and people are just going, this just isn't worth it. People just don't really want to go. They just don't feel the motivation to go. DGen Ben, a regular poster on Vegas Casino Talk, sarcastically wrote, "Yeah, Vegas sounds like a fun place to spend Super Bowl weekend. Hour-long plus check-in lines, 6 to 5 blackjack, 000 roulette, 85% return slot machines, 97% return video poker, electronic craps. Maybe the average football fan is slightly more aware of how bad these all are than the general public at large." Yeah, it's a good point. By the way, the check-in lines have been a big problem recently. A big problem. I'm not talking about this weekend necessarily, but probably then too. But there have been a lot of videos of insane check-in lines. In fact, Horseshoe in Paris had one a few weeks ago that was like a 3-hour line because Paris was having a problem with their check-in and directed everybody to Horseshoe. So it really made like a 3-hour line to check in. It's insane. And this is because of the cuts that they have made to front desk staff. So they just don't hire enough people to check everybody in, and a giant line forms. So that's also irritating people. That's more of a newer problem. So we don't know for sure why this is happening, but I've never seen a Super Bowl weekend with rates this low. So maybe Vegas should finally take note. Maybe it's time to be more tourist and customer friendly. Maybe it's time to bring the value back, because you can bring the value back and still make money. I'm not saying that casinos owe people vacations that are going to cost them money. I'm saying that you don't have to squeeze every penny out of each tourist on each visit to the extent you're doing. It's not going to hurt to provide some value elements for the customer like you used to. Otherwise, they're just not going to come. So I'm actually hoping that's happening. I'm hoping Vegas has some reckoning here where they have to reconsider the way they're doing business. I've never seen customer service so bad as I have recently at Vegas properties. It's gotten really bad. There's very few employees. The employees that are there are not empowered to solve problems. The rude ones don't even get fired. They almost want these casinos to run themselves. They made more automation there, and people who work there are less empowered than ever. And this is even extended to casino hosts as well, that they've been neutered. It's just become a very automated, cold experience, and people don't like it. Major League Baseball umpire Pat Hoberg has been fired over allowing his sports betting accounts to be used by a friend to place bets on baseball games, including ones where he was umpiring. In February 2024, Major League Baseball was tipped off by a company that ran a sports book, and they were told to investigate Pat Hoberg because it seemed there was account sharing going on. Major League Baseball found no evidence that Hoberg was personally betting on baseball or manipulating games, but it was recommended on May 24th that he would be dismissed. Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred said, "I think today we have much greater ability to monitor what's happening and determine if something inappropriate is going on compared to when betting was done in secret rooms and was illegal. It's always a threat. We spend a lot of time and money. We get a lot more information. We have access to much more information now that it's legal." So basically he's defending the fact that there's legalized betting on baseball and that Major League Baseball has been cooperative with these casinos and with these sites allowing sports betting, basically saying, hey, they give us information when something wrong is happening and we can take action. So anyway, Hoberg shared this account, and the person he was sharing it with was described as a pro poker player. I'm not sure which one it is, probably someone I've heard of, but he and a pro poker player shared an account, and that account placed 141 individual bets on baseball in a 2-year span between 2021 and 2023. And 19 of those bets were placed from electronic devices that didn't belong to Hoberg or in his home. They are concerned that this other person was betting sometimes on the account, and that, again, these were on baseball games, and some of these were being umpired by Hoberg. I think 5 of them, Hoberg was the umpire. They investigated the games where he was umpiring that was bet, and they couldn't find any evidence that he was doing anything wrong or calling the games incorrectly to give himself an edge. And it was not him placing these bets. It was found that the bet was placed by somebody else outside his home. But still, this is very bad. He was actually ranked among the best Major League Baseball's umpires as far as accuracy in calling balls and strikes. And in the 2022 World Series in Game 2, where he was umpiring, he actually did not make a mistake in all 129 pitches that were not swung at, where he had to make a call. He called them all correctly according to data that was analyzed regarding balls and strikes, where the computer can see what the correct call should have been, and he got them all right. He actually earned the nickname Perfect Pat, but apparently he's not so perfect, sharing his account with a pro poker player who then bets on games that he's umpiring sometimes. He was not a winning gambler. Apparently, he made a total of 709,605 bets over a period of about 3 years, but he lost almost $75,000 there. So he was actually losing more than 10% of the money he was betting. So keep in mind that eye-popping figure of $709,000, that's of total wagers. That's not money he lost. That's just when you add up all the wagers together. So usually you're going to win some, lose some, and then eventually the juice is going to get you. So by losing 74,000 something out of 709,000, that puts him kind of close to what the house juice is anyway. So it looks like, without the juice, he would have been roughly a break-even bettor. So he wasn't a terrible bettor, but he was definitely losing and chunked off almost $75K in a period of about 3 years. There's a second problem that occurred with Hoberg, and that was during the investigation of this whole thing, he deleted 2 messaging threads with the guy he shared the account with from what was listed as a secure messaging app, maybe something like WhatsApp. And then he also had a phone conversation where that person instructed him to just delete that entire app from his phone. So Major League Baseball was unable to recover these messages with that app completely wiped from his phone. And there's no proof that Hoberg bet on baseball or instructed that partner to do it, only that they shared an account and the other guy did it sometimes. So Hoberg can at least say, look, we shared an account, but I didn't realize what this guy was doing. And I guess he can kind of stick to that story. Now, he's not allowed to do this, so he got fired. But there's not much more they can do, and they can't really prosecute him or anything like that. He will be allowed to apply for reinstatement at the start of spring training in 2026. But they may not reinstate him. In fact, I'm guessing they probably won't. It's not clear what was really going on there between Hoberg and this other guy sharing the account. This wasn't like a sports betting bearding thing, I would presume, because the account lost. Maybe it was an unsuccessful one. Maybe they were just friends and shared an account, and the whole thing was innocent but ended up looking bad. But maybe they were doing this, and maybe Hoberg would at some point throw a game as far as his umpiring. And also, maybe he thought he had inside information for the guy, and it just didn't work out. Whatever it was, that's not good. An umpire can have a tremendous effect on the game, and if it's a game that was bet on, that he has a piece of the action, you can imagine what would happen. So we'll see more of these stories in all these sports as time passes. We've already had an NBA player completely disqualified from the league for life for purposely leaving games, supposedly with injuries, so under prop bets on him would win, and they were caught. And another player, this time in baseball, who was banned forever, Tucupita Marcano, who played for Pittsburgh. It was a result of betting on games involving the Pirates while he was on the injured list. So Marcano could not have thrown those games because he wasn't able to play, but he was banned for life from baseball because he bet on games involving his own team. There were 4 minor leaguers suspended at the same time as Marcano, but they were not suspended for life because what they were doing wasn't as bad. They were using baseball games that they had no connection to, that they weren't on the same team, as baseball legs in parlays. So they shouldn't have done that either and weren't allowed to, but it's not nearly as bad as betting on your own team. So anyway, I don't think we'll see Pat Hoberg umpiring any games ever again, even though he was a very good umpire. I still wonder what was really going on there and who the poker pro was who was involved with him. 2 Vegas women who murdered a tourist in a scheme where they tricked a guy to go up to his room at Caesar's Palace, then attempted to rob him and murdered him during the robbery, have been sentenced, but the sentence is surprisingly light, and I don't quite understand why. maybe it's a case of female privilege in the justice system, which is a real thing in the criminal justice system where females are not sentenced as harshly as males. Though I will say that it's usually white females who get off easily in criminal cases. Just for whatever reason, judges and juries have a hard time seeing white females, especially young, pretty white females, as hardened criminals. They just kind of can't picture them as evil as they can males. So they tend to get off very lightly compared to what they did, and to compare to what a male would get for the same crime. But non-white females, while still faring better than males, they don't fare as well in court as white females do. But in this case, they did fare very well, and I bet if it was two dudes who did this, they would have been sentenced a lot more harshly. So we've reported on this before on this show when the crime occurred. This was in May 2023. Erica Covington and Ariana Taylor, who were 21 and 22 years old now, they were younger then, they murdered a man named Brian Altamirano Solano, who was actually in the country trying to apply for refugee status. And I don't even know how good English he spoke. But he was 25 years old, and he was set up by these two women who pretended to have interest in him, and they went up to his room at Caesar's Palace to rob him. And one of the two women, it's not ever been said who, but one of the two shot him dead. And then after shooting him dead, they stole his stuff and ran out of the room. So the police had a lot of evidence against these two. They were seen on video walking with him in the casino in Caesar's Palace with his arm connected to each of them on each side. So he's walking with both women through the casino. Channel 8 News in Vegas showed this video of the three of them walking, and he had a big smile on his face. So these piece of shit local Vegas women showed up to the casino and came there with the intention of robbing men, getting them to the room alone and robbing them and bringing a gun there to do it. And so they hit on men there, and then the men are so thrilled that two girls are going to go up to the room with them, and then one of them will pull a gun and rob them, and then they run off. I don't know if they had planned to murder him. I'm guessing probably not. Maybe he kind of flipped out when they pulled the gun. Who knows what it was. This was never revealed. But it was shown on camera that they're walking up together, arm in arm. He looks so happy. And then they murdered him in his room, and it's shown that they're both running down the hallway afterwards with his stuff. They were found with his stuff. So there's no question they did it. And the cartridge casing that was found inside the room matched Ariana Taylor's weapon. So they had these women dead to rights as far as what they did. There's no way they could deny that it was them. The only thing they could try to do is blame each other and say that the other pulled the trigger and both pointing the finger at the other. However, there's a law in Nevada that makes both people responsible for murder if they were in on doing it together. It doesn't matter who pulled the trigger, they can both be charged for murder. So anyway, it was pretty clear that they were going to be sentenced, and they did plea to avoid a trial. So they pled guilty, and along the sentencing agreement, they were sentenced to a whopping 10 years in prison, with a maximum of 25. So it's basically 10 to life. Not 10. So it was basically 10 to 25 years. So if they meet the requirement to be paroled, they will be paroled at 10. In fact, it's not even 10. It's going to be more like 8, because they have already been in jail since May 2023, and that counts as time served. So they could actually be released in May of 2033. And they'll be fairly young at that point. They'll be like 29 and 30 at that point. So they'll have a full life ahead of them. And in the meantime, the poor victim, Brian Altamirano Solano, was murdered at age 25, seeking asylum from Nicaragua. I don't understand this. I don't understand why they even let them plead down to 10 years. It's one thing if they're going to plead down to 30 years or something to avoid a life sentence, but how can they plead down to 10 years? How could this be allowed? I don't get it. It's not like they didn't have enough evidence. It's not like it was seen like they were walking with him and then nothing was seen after that and they couldn't prove they killed him. They had one of the women's cartridges in their weapon right in the room, and they were seen running out of the room after it happened and taking his stuff. What are they supposed to claim happened there? Like, the best they could claim is they tried to rob him and then he tried to grab the gun and it accidentally went off and killed him. But then they could actually disprove that by forensics showing the angle of where the weapon was shot and how far away it was. And so it can be shown if it shot during a struggle rather than just he was shot in cold blood. But I think he was shot in cold blood. I think maybe he was refusing to give up the stuff, or he freaked out, or whatever it was. One of them decided to shoot him dead. They showed on the surveillance footage that at 2:14 a.m., he was talking to both of them in the valet area. Then they were walking to his room at 2:35 a.m. And then less than 15 minutes later, Covington and Taylor were running through the hallway, and one of them was carrying his bag. So, I mean, that's pretty obvious what happened there, right? His father said during the sentencing on video, "It wasn't enough just taking his belongings, they had to kill him. I asked for justice for my son." His mother said, "The pain I felt was so deep, I feel like I just lost my life. I had so many questions. Why? Why my son?" It's very sad. You can see on this Channel 8 article, 8newsnow.com, you can see they have a close-up of his face. He looked like a simple and happy guy. He was from Nicaragua. He probably didn't speak much English. These two girls approach him, which, by the way, they're not very attractive. I don't even know how he went up there with them. They weren't attractive at all. They looked very shady. But anyway, let's put that aside. Two girls approach him. They feign interest. One is on each arm. He's so happy. He's got this big smile on my face, like, "Hey, I don't know anyone here. I'm from Nicaragua. I barely speak the language, but these two girls, they want to go up to my room with me and have some fun with me. This is great. What a country." And then they kill him. It's just so sad. You can just see in his face what he's thinking at the time. He doesn't know in less than 15 minutes he's going to be dead because they murder him. It's just so disgusting. Like, people like that should be put to death. Forget life in prison. I want to see these two get the fucking death penalty. That's what they deserve. How did they get 10 years in prison? How did they get to survive like the rest of their life after 30 out of prison? But they're going to get that. They're going to get to live age 30 and beyond out of prison while this guy is dead. I don't care if it was an accidental shooting when they were just trying to rob him. If you try to rob someone, if you bring a gun into someone's room for the purpose of robbing them, and you kill them during the process of robbing them, I don't care the way it went down. You deserve the death penalty, but especially if you just fire at the person for no good reason, which is kind of looked like what happened here. But I don't even care what happened. They brought a gun to the guy's room to rob him. They set him up down there to bring him up to his room and rob him in the room. It's far worse than drugging someone and stealing their stuff when they're sleeping, which deserves a stiff prison term also, but not life. But when you bring a gun up there with the plan to use the gun to commit armed robbery and the victim ends up dead, you don't deserve to live anymore. You should not be able to walk around on this earth. You definitely should not be getting out of prison at age 30 and then living out a full life. You should be put to death yourself. It's clear they're guilty as sin. There should not have been a plea bargain. They should not be getting out in 10 years. This is a stupid justice system. And you can't even say it's from influence or wealth or anything like that. These are two girls with nothing. They don't have any influence or wealth. It's just a shitty system. I still think somewhat is female privilege there in the justice system, which definitely exists. And by the way, I'm not denying that male privilege exists in other areas of life. It definitely does. But in the criminal court system, it is much better to be a female accused of something than a male. Much better. That's shocking. That's shocking. And that was the reaction on social media. Everybody on social media is like, what the fuck? How did they get only 10 years? How? It doesn't make any sense. Just two disgusting people. One of them at least apologized in court. Probably wasn't sincere, but she said, I'd like to send my condolences to Brian's family. I deeply, genuinely apologize for the grief and the pain that's been brought to you guys' family. The other one wouldn't even speak. Probably the one who fired it. I think it was probably this Ariana Taylor who fired it. She would not speak in court. I've had women in these casinos attempt to approach me and start a conversation. And some of them looked very shady. Some of them I could easily see doing something like this. I know they're not interested in me because I'm so attractive. I know that at minimum it's some kind of prostitution thing. So I just ignore them. I don't even answer them. And I've had some just, keep calling out. Like, call, hey, what's up? Hey, come on, talk to us. And I keep walking. Oh, why won't you answer? Oh, why aren't you talk to us? Why are you being so rude? Like, they'll yell at me when I don't respond to them. But I just keep walking because I know it's either a prostitution thing or worse. But I see how this happens. Because if you're not knowledgeable of this, which you can understand why this guy wouldn't be from another country with no experience with this type of thing, and you're just in the casino and two women approach you and they're very friendly and they act like they want to have fun and go up to the room with you, you're thinking, oh, sweet, I'm going to get laid. I'm going to have a threesome. You don't think that you're going to get robbed. And that's what they count on. They jump on guys who look lonely and naive, or ones they think that will be impressed that they're showing interest in them. So they do it to me because of my age. They figure that a middle-aged white guy, one, is likely to have some money, so at minimum, I could afford their services. And two, that I might be impressed that much younger women are wanting to talk to me and give me attention. Whereas if I were 25, they might figure, okay, well, I talk to young women all the time because those are women my age. But, when they see I'm older, then they figure I'll be more likely to want to talk to them if they're showing interest in talking to me. But it's the opposite. I know what this is. So I don't even respond. I just pretend like they're not there and keep walking. But you see how this works. Not only that, when people see that they only get 10 years when they've committed murder, this is going to encourage others to commit the same crimes if this is the worst they're going to get. I really wish the justice system was different. I really wish that absolute scum like these two women were just put to death. These people shouldn't be in society. They don't provide any use in society. They actually murdered someone here, an innocent person. Anyway, that's the update to that story. Very sad. Let me give you some Caesars news. Caesars is likely to massively downgrade the 4 free drink benefit, and it'll probably happen before you hear this because there's one more day of it. It's going to happen on February 10th, supposedly. This is not verified. Caesars won't talk about it, but that's what's the rumor going around, the strong rumor going around. And unless you're listening live, you'll probably hear about this after it takes place, and maybe more information will come out by then. But the rumor started a long time ago, and I actually heard it. I was the first person to report it, and that was in July 2024. I was told by a Caesars insider that they are going to do away with the free 4-drink benefit in the Las Vegas market starting in February 2025. Now, the reason February 2025 is because that's the beginning of the new Caesars year. Caesars doesn't begin their year for benefits on January 1st. They begin earning on January 1st. So on the 1st of January, your tier score goes to 0. But your benefits begin February 1st. So there's a month in between where you keep your old status. It was told to me February 1st. This is back in July. I was told February 1st, 2025, the 4 free drink benefit for people who have Diamond Plus, Diamond Elite, and 7 stars would lose that benefit. They're just going to do away with the benefit. And I was told the reason for this was because it became very burdensome and expensive for Caesars because people were showing up every day, especially locals, and getting 4 expensive prepackaged drinks that were at these various outlets around Caesars properties and then just taking them home. They weren't gambling. They just show up, use their Diamond Plus card, get the 4 free drinks, whether it's naked juice or some other fairly expensive drink or Tropicana orange juice. These prepackaged drinks that cost Caesars real money to buy from third parties. It's different when you're just getting free bar drinks, which cost Caesars very little money to serve you. Even if the drinks have a retail price that's high, it costs them very little money. But they have to pay real money to get naked juice or to get these Tropicana orange juices or these other premium drinks. I'm talking about non-alcoholic drinks that come in a package that are not made by them. You could also use the drink benefit at Starbucks, at Pronto by Giada. So the problem was that there were too many expensive prepackaged drinks that people were buying and taking home, or even if they weren't locals, were just getting and then shoving in their in-room refrigerator, and they weren't gambling. There were some locals who were going all 365 days per year to get these 4 drinks. They were on a mission to do this. And if you add it up, that cost Caesars a lot of money. And I'm talking about hard money, not what they would have sold it for. I'm talking about what it actually cost them to buy. It also was a headache for them because they had to keep restocking these drinks over and over and over again. It became a burden for Caesars to keep cycling these drinks through these outlets that had to keep replacing them. Some of these outlets, like the ones in the Link and Harrah's, constantly had a line of people that were mostly just using their 4 free drink benefit to get these drinks. There's just so many people doing it just all day. People were doing this, and they had to keep bringing in more and more and more and hold a lot on hand. It was very, very burdensome. But how did we get here? How did this even happen? Well, if you remember, in 2020, Caesars closed their Diamond Lounges, which had been renamed Laurel Lounges, and blamed COVID for it. Well, once COVID subsided enough to where they couldn't blame that anymore, the people who had Diamond said, hey, wait a minute, what happened to our lounges? Diamond and 7 Stars were used to going into a lounge and getting free drinks. Why can't we go into a lounge? Where is it? It's gone. You can't blame COVID anymore. So they came up with the replacement idea that instead of the Laurel Lounges, you now get 4 free drinks on property per day if you were Diamond Plus or higher. And people initially thought, oh, okay, so, I guess we can go to the casino bar and get 4 free drinks, whatever. If you're gambling, you get free drinks anyway. But you could actually go without gambling to the casino bar and just get up to 4 free drinks. And you don't have to do it all at once. You could do one at a time. But then people realized, wait a minute, maybe this also works at these little outlets around Caesars that sell prepackaged drinks like naked juice. And people tried, and hey, it worked. It worked there too. So people are like, well, screw that. We're not going to just go get drinks at the bar. We're going to start collecting those drinks. And locals especially jumped on it. So this is just a dumb idea. What Caesars should have done if they were smart is said, okay, you get 4 free drinks at the bar, but that's it. You do not. You can't just take it to these outlets and get these prepackaged drinks. That's not what this is for. Because it's not like they had naked juice or Tropicana orange juice at the Laurel Lounges. They did not. So why would you be able to get this with the drink benefits? It was just Caesars doing something stupidly. They thought by providing just 4 free drinks, period, that people won't abuse it. Like they were just kind of picturing like who's going to come every day just to get 4 free drinks at the casino bar. They didn't think about all the locals abusing this. Well, I heard in July that they're going to just end this whole benefit and just reopen the Laurel Lounges. Now, this is still possible, but I have not heard they are reopening the Laurel Lounges. What I have heard online is that people are being told around Caesars that Starbucks and Pronto by Giada are not going to be honoring these 4 drink benefits for Diamond Plus and Elite members starting February 10th. Seven Stars can still do it. Diamond of any kind can't. So everyone's reporting, oh, no more drinks at Starbucks. Well, I think it goes further. And I go back to what I was told by a Caesars insider in July, that they are just doing away with it. And someone else, I think they told Vital Vegas, that it's going to only be available at select casino bars. But I don't think Vital Vegas quite got it. I think he was saying that it's going to end at Starbucks. So anyway, here's what I really think is going to happen. I believe that for Diamond Plus and Diamond Elite, who previously were getting these 4 drinks per day at any of these outlets, I think that's over. I think starting February 10th, it's going to be over. You can't get it anymore. Now, I don't know if February 10th is the last day and it begins at the 11th, or if today, the 9th, is the last day, and then the 10th it begins that you can't do it. I think it's the latter. Anyway, whatever day it happens, 10th or 11th, I believe if you're Diamond Plus or Diamond Elite and you try to go get a Naked Juice or any kind of prepackaged drink anywhere, they will say, no, you can't do it. And you'll say, okay, well, what can I use my drink benefit for? And they will say, you can go to the casino bar and get well drinks. And I bet that's all you're going to be able to get. I think any prepackaged drink anywhere is not going to be available with this benefit if you're a Diamond of any kind. I believe that is the action being taken, and if people bitch, they can say, well, look, we're still giving you 4 free drinks, just only at the bars. That would lead me to believe that, plus the fact that 7 Stars are apparently still going to be eligible for it, that would lead me to believe that they are not reopening the Laurel Lounges, otherwise they would just end this entirely. I think they're just modifying it back to probably what it should have been in the first place. And maybe they're taking the attitude of, okay, if you're going to put the expense into 7 Stars and want to hit us for these drinks, fine. But there's way, 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 way more Diamond Plus and Elite people than 7 Stars. So they figure that they're going to really lower the burden to have this be 7 Stars only, especially because most 7 Stars are not local. So they don't have to worry as much about the people who go there and use it 365 days a year. Now, I've got another idea for Caesars. Why don't they just identify the abusers of it and cut their drinks off, rather than ruin the whole benefit? I don't think they're that worried about the tourists that come in for, maybe a combined 14 days per year and get the 4 free drinks on most of the days they're there. I think they're more concerned about the people who just show up every single day who live in Vegas. So why don't they just look up about the total redemptions, and if it exceeds a certain amount, just cut them off, unless they're tremendous gamblers that are worth allowing to do this. I said the same thing about the 7 Stars free room benefit that they did away with in 2018. That year they stopped allowing you to get free rooms guaranteed just for being a 7 Stars member. You used to be able to do 4 or 5 nights for free just for that at any property with no blackout dates. And then they did away with it and just attached it to your play as they do for every level, for every tier level. And I found out the reason for this was that there were people in Atlantic City abusing this and basically becoming Caesars roommates. They'd give up their apartment and then they would live together in a Caesars room in Atlantic City. And you say, okay, but it's only 4 or 5 nights. Well, it would be 4 or 5 nights and then 2 nights off. And then you could do it again. So if you have 2 people, then you can just keep swapping rooms or even stay in the same room and just be roommates and just keep alternating which person uses the benefit. And you could literally live the whole year there. And people were doing that. So the right thing for Caesars to do is identify the abusers of the 7-star room benefit and cut them off. But no, they just killed the whole room benefit. And that's when I stopped being a 7 Stars member. So starting 2019, I've been Diamond every year. So I will be very surprised if it's only Starbucks and only Giada that does this, because Pronto by Giada and Starbucks are still Caesars owned. I believe the Starbucks are completely Caesars owned, and the Pronto by Giada is 50-50 between Caesars and Giada herself. But the point is, the prepackaged drinks at these places are pretty much equivalent to the prepackaged drinks at the non-name brand places where you can get those drinks. So there's just regular outlets throughout each Caesars casino where you can get these prepackaged drinks. And then there's also Starbucks and then Pronto by Giada. And I don't see where they just kill Starbucks and Pronto Baggiata, but let you keep getting the Naked Juice and the Tropicana and all the other expensive stuff at the other outlets. It just wouldn't make sense. Either they're trying to kill the prepackaged drink abuse or they're not. I don't see a middle ground. So I think the Starbucks thing is just kind of the rumor that made it to the internet because someone spoke to someone at Starbucks. I don't think it's only happening there and at Pronto. So anyway, you can say goodbye to that. And I warned you about it. I was the only one reporting this back in August. That's when I revealed it. I heard it in July, reported in August. Now, it was reported widely in May. I wouldn't say super widely, but a few people reported it, that some people were getting cut off, that Caesars felt hadn't spent enough money earning Diamond and were abusing the drinks too much. Nobody except me was reporting in the summer that this was coming. I was the only one reporting it. I'm not sure if I said it on the show or not, but I know I said it on Twitter, and I know I said it on Vegas Casino Talk. In fact, I found the post on Vegas Casino Talk in August where I revealed it. So yes, the Poker Fraudulent exclusive is probably going to come true. Again, Caesars has not verified this, but they have not denied it, and we will see what happens in the coming days. More Caesars news. Caesars had an enticing 10 times tier credit promotion in January, from January 20th to 26th in the Las Vegas market. You did not have to be invited to it. This applied to anyone who had a Caesars rewards card. You did not have to live in Vegas. You could be anywhere. You just had to come into Vegas and play between January 20th at 6 a.m. and January 27th at 5:59 a.m. So it was a actually 7-day promotion. As long as you swiped in and chose that promotion, then you were eligible for it. And it was very nice because no matter what machine or table you played at, you would get 10 times the tier credits that you would normally get. The only exception was the bonus tiers that you would earn for earning a certain amount of tiers in one day. You would still get them, but those bonus tiers would not be multiplied. But they never are in this type of thing. But the base tiers you're earning would be multiplied. So, let's figure this out. How much would it take to earn Diamond? I'm not talking about Diamond Plus, but regular Diamond in one day if you come in with 0. Which you probably are coming in with 0 because it's in January and your tier score always resets to 0 on January 1st. So, assuming you come in with 0 tiers, how much play do you have to do to get yourself to Diamond? Well, not all that much. You only have to earn 1,400 tier credits, which is $14,000 worth of coin in on video poker, and $7,000 worth of coin in on slots. Now, that may still sound like a lot, but I'm not talking about losses. I'm talking about coin in, meaning the number of credits you play on the machine and translated to dollars. So very simply, let's say you're playing $5 a hand video poker. Not $5 per credit, but $5 a hand. Every time you play a hand, that counts as $5 coin in, whether you win or lose. Now, what happens in video poker? Well, you win some hands, you lose some hands. So your balance goes up, your balance goes down, your balance goes up, your balance goes down. You win something decent from hitting a big hand like 4 of a kind. It goes up a good deal. Then you go through a slump where you get mostly bricks and you go down 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. And yeah, you usually end up with less than you started. Sometimes you get lucky that you won. But the point is you're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. In the meantime, the coin in is adding up. Because let's say you win $5, then you lose $5. Well, then you're even, but you've cycled through $10 coin in. So all you'd have to do is 14,000 coin in on video poker, and that would get you 1,400 tier credits, which first would earn you 1,000 tier credit bonus for earning 1,000 plus tier credits, and then it will get multiplied by 10, the base tier credits you earn. So the 1,400 becomes 14,000 plus the 1,000 bonus you're getting, and that takes you to, yes, 15,000, which is what you need to be Diamond. And it's even better because it's in January. You not only remain Diamond for the entire rest of 2025, you also will remain Diamond through all of 2026. Yeah. and a month of 2027. So if you earned diamond or any other status on that promo, you will remain that status until January 31st, 2027. And that's always been the case of how the tier levels work at Caesars and when they expire. But I've never seen a 10 times tier promo, especially that is valid on everything. Because sometimes they'll give you more tiers at a table game than slots as far as the multiplier, or you'll get it on slots but not video poker, or they degrade what you get from video poker. Here, even with video poker, you get 10 times. So a lot of people went in and took advantage of this. And this really degrades diamond, by the way. This makes a lot more diamonds coming to Caesars, and that will make the lines longer and all that. But let's put that aside. You know, personally, for each individual who otherwise wouldn't get to diamond or would have to spend a lot more money getting to diamond, this benefits them. Poker players would very much benefit from this because at the World Series of Poker, it is very beneficial to be diamond. Sounds good, right? Except one little thing. In typical Caesars fashion, they mess something up, and any new status you earned through this promotion, you did not get. This was due to a bug in the system. So what happened was the system got confused starting February 1st when the tiers will degrade for anyone who hadn't earned the tier they were before. So basically on February 1st, that's when the tier changes take place. Remember, whatever you were the previous year, you still stay throughout January. And then on February 1st, your new tier is either going to be what you earned this calendar year or what you earned last calendar year, whatever's higher. So, for example, if you earned diamond from your play, I'm talking about your play, not your status match or anything, but if you earned from your play in 2024 diamond, then on February 1st, at minimum, you'll be diamond because you get another year of it. But let's say you didn't earn anything in 2024. Let's say you never even got to what would be platinum, which is below diamond. And then in 2025, you earn diamond in January. Then on February 1st, you should still be diamond. Now, let's say you earn diamond in 2024 through your play, but in 2025, you've only earned enough to be platinum. Well, then on February 1st, you would just stay diamond because you're going to get the better of the two statuses. And then you'll not keep the diamond if you don't get to diamond at some point in 2025, then you'll lose it on February 1st, 2026. So the point is, on February 1st, the system should be looking at 2 years. It should be looking at the previous year, which is 2024, and see what you would have earned from your play, and from 2025, the first month, what you've earned, and then award you the higher of the two statuses. So, anyone who earned a higher status in the first month of 2025 than what they earned in 2024 did not get their status, and instead they just got the 2024 status. I don't know if this only happened to those who used the 10-time tier promotion or to everybody. I think it was just the 10 times tier promotion. I think that's who it occurred to, but maybe it was everybody. There were a lot of reports on Reddit and on forums and elsewhere that this had happened, and most of the people claimed it was the 10 times tier promotion. Now, the funny thing is Caesars actually outdid what they claimed in one aspect, because they said the bonus tiers may not show up for as many as 10 business days, which could be 2 weeks. And they said probably the minimum is 7. Well, they outdid that. Within 3, pretty much everybody had their bonus tiers, which is great. But what wasn't great was that people were not getting the status that they should have gotten them. So if they had already earned that status the prior year and basically re-earned it in January, they were fine. But if they earned something in January that was greater than what they had earned in 2024, then they didn't get it. And what was really weird is the way it would show on the site. So, for example, if you did not earn diamond in 2024, but you were diamond, or whether you were or not, it doesn't matter. If you didn't earn diamond through your play in 2024, but in January with that 10 times promo, you earned 15K tiers in 2025, what it would show on the Caesars Reward site is that you're gold, the bottom tier, but that you have 15,000 tier credits and that it's just minus 10,000 tiers to make platinum. Not 10,000 tiers, minus 10,000 tiers. So it's basically saying you're gold right now, but if you earn minus 10,000 tiers, then you can make platinum. And this happened because the system thought the person was gold, but then also saw a tier score and wasn't smart enough to determine that didn't make any sense. So instead of just auto-fixing it, the system said, well, you're gold, and let's see, how many tiers are you away from 5,000? Well, you have 15,000 tiers, so that means you're minus 10,000 away. And people just sat there thinking, okay, maybe there's some error here on February 1st. I'm sure it'll fix tomorrow. Nope. I'm sure it'll fix the next day. Nope. I'm sure it'll fix the next day. Nope. Well, by February 4th, people are getting real nervous about this, going, what the hell? Why am I not getting my proper status? So the good news is it's easy to fix. It does not require a visit to the Caesars Reward desk. All it requires is an email. So if this has happened to you, just go on the Caesars.com website and log in, or go on the app, whatever way you check. And if your tier status is not showing properly, if you have a higher tier score than what your status is showing, like if you have 15K tiers and yet you're showing gold, that's incorrect, just email Caesars, their Caesars Rewards help desk, and they will fix it for you. The email address is Caesars Rewards, exactly as it sounds, Caesars Rewards with a capital C, at custhelp.com. Cust like customer, C-U-S-T help.com. Caesars Rewards at custhelp.com. Just tell them what happened. Tell them, hey, I have a tier score of this. I should be this status. Instead of showing this lower status, can you fix it? They will usually take care of it within a day. That's the good news. It's easy to fix. Very dumb that this happened, and very dumb that upon learning this is happening, they didn't just blanket fix it for everybody. Now, I'm sure it will be blanket fixed for everybody, but I'll tell you why you don't want to wait for that, because first of all, who knows when it'll happen, and second, if you try to book a room and you're not diamond or higher, it's going to try to charge you resort fees, and you don't want to pay those, even if you can fix it later. Why pay what you shouldn't have to pay? Because once you're diamond, you don't pay resort fees. You may ask, wait a minute, how can there be resort fees? I thought these are illegal. And I say, no, they're not. They just have to disclose them. They have to add it all into one price. That's all they have to do. They have to make it a much clearer disclosure. They don't have to eliminate the fees themselves. They just can't have you booking a room where it's saying it's a certain price and then the fine print says it's such and such extra for resort fees. It has to be an all-in pricing by the end. That's really the only requirement. So you may not even realize it. You may try to book it and see that just the rate is such and such, and you go, oh, wow, it's more expensive than it said at the beginning, but okay, whatever, it seems like a good deal still. And then not even realize that's including a $50 resort fee, which you shouldn't even be charged because you should be diamond, and it's not putting you as diamond. So just email that if you've got that problem. Just check on it and email if you got that problem. They'll fix it within a day. Now, let's say you have not earned the status you'd like, whether it's Diamond, Diamond Plus, Diamond Elite, 7 stars. Let's say you haven't earned the status yet, and you want to. Now, keep in mind, again, if you earned it last year in 2024, you don't have to. You're going to have it all of 2025 plus a month of 2026, so there's no rush. In fact, you may want to even wait to do it next year, depending on whatever your plans are. But let's say your status is not any good right now. Let's say you're at the bottom at gold, or let's say you're at platinum, and you want to get to diamond. Let's say you're diamond, you want to get to diamond plus, whatever it is. You want to raise your status at Caesars. But how do you do it? How can you get to diamond without losing your ass? What are the best games to play? Is there a way to do it without playing? Well, the good news is there is a thread on the internet that gives you all of these answers. A very comprehensive thread that an individual, a very generous individual with his time, has updated, after not updating it for a while, has decided to bear down and update the entire thread with current information in all markets in the United States where the best games can be found, and explains the whole thing about the best ways to earn and what you have to watch out for and everything you want to know. Who is this individual? That would be a fine gentleman known as Todd Druff would tell us. Yes, the thread is on pokerfraudalert.com. and it is by me. If you go to the Casinos and Las Vegas subforum of pokerfraudalert.com, then you can find this thread, which is called Best Ways to 7 Stars, Diamond, or Diamond in a Day for Caesars properties around the U.S. And it lists a lot of information, including the known multiplier days, which I'll try to update, but I won't guarantee. And then all the other information about what you're doing here, how to earn it cheaply, things to watch out for. There's like a lot of good information. I have links to the different strategy guides on how to play perfect or near perfect video poker. If you're not an expert, you can just go by the guide and use that. And most importantly, the best video poker games in each market. And these markets include Las Vegas, Lake Tahoe, Laughlin, Reno, Missouri, Phoenix, Atlantic City, Mississippi, Louisiana, Illinois, North Carolina, Colorado, Ontario, Canada, Iowa, Indiana, and then I even list the casinos which you don't want to play at, like Harrah's Philadelphia, Horseshoe Baltimore, both Harrah's in California, Harrah's Pompano Beach, and Harrah's Hoosier Park Racing and Casino, things like that, and even the Lincoln O'Shea's in Vegas and Harrah's Metropolis in Illinois. So those are the ones that are not listed because the games suck there, but I even put there, avoid those. So it's a guide on how to earn it through video poker, the cheapest with a strategy on each one. I do it all for you. It's all right there for you. Furthermore, I list some ways you can earn diamond without playing, though it's not as easy anymore. The Wyndham Earner Business Card will no longer match the Caesars Diamond, so don't bother with that card. You might as well cancel it. But there are a few ways still to do it, and you can look that there on the first page of the thread. It lists that at the bottom of the first post there. Everything you want to know. It is not fun updating that thread. It's very tedious. I have to go through a lot of information to do it. It's not something I enjoy, but it's something I like providing to the public. I've gotten a lot of praise from people at the World Series who have seen that thread and used it to earn diamond or 7 stars a lot cheaper than they did before. And there's nothing wrong with using any of the information here. Caesars will not be mad at you. They will not ban you. This is just playing smart. This is not advantage play, by the way. So if you're afraid to be an advantage play or anything like that, it's not advantage play. It's just the smartest you can be without being an advantage player as far as earning the status. It explains how to maximize the bonus credits and how to use the tier multipliers. Pretty much everything you're going to need to know. And even if you're an expert, at least you'll still be able to just quickly browse through and see what are the best games to play, because it's constantly changing. Just want to warn you, the Vegas market, even though it has the most multipliers, the games are not particularly good in Vegas. The best games you'll find in Reno and in North Carolina, also in St. Louis of all places. El Dorado Reno is still my favorite as far as the options, but Harrah's Cherokee still has a good game. Horseshoe St. Louis has a good game. And even in Colorado, which is a newer Caesars market because of the El Dorado merger, there is a 9-6 jacks or better, which is a fairly good game, at Lady Luck Blackhawk. So check it out. Check the thread out. You can always text me 775-372-8355 if you'd like any help with this, if any of this confuses you. Commerce Casino has closed all of its safe deposit boxes, and I believe there are no more safe deposit boxes at LA card rooms. Something changed about the regulatory requirements, and the casinos in California panicked, at least the card rooms did, and they decided to close the boxes, but it didn't all happen at once. So people started getting notices about this, that their boxes were getting closed. And one notable exception was Commerce. Commerce was letting people keep their boxes. I remember when Hustler was closing them and notified people at the end of 2023, including me. I asked them, okay, if this is something you have to do because of regulatory reasons, why isn't Commerce doing this? And I was told they will, if they just haven't yet. They're pretty much the last man standing, and they're going to soon enough. Apparently, there was some change in anti-money laundering regulations that could put the casinos more liable for having these boxes, and it was just too much of a headache. These boxes were nice because they were free, provided that they would give you one. You did not pay a yearly fee for them. You paid an initial key deposit, usually between $50 and $100, but that was it. And you would get that money back, provided you returned the key when you closed the box. So they were completely free, and they were accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they were normal safe deposit boxes. So they're very nice to have, but now they're all gone. Interestingly, the casinos, including now Commerce, which has now closed all the boxes as well, the last one to do it, all of them have been violating the law regarding the closures. California law requires a lot more notice regarding the time people have to get down to their box and get their stuff out. And this applies to casinos and even banks that have been closing their safe deposit boxes. And they've all been acting very shady. They backdate letters. They don't send out letters and claim they sent them 6 months ago. And the reason for this is Section 1514B, actually, of California gambling law. But it's not just about gambling. Listen to this. If a business association has in its records an address for an apparent owner of the contents of or the proceeds of sale of the contents of a safe deposit box or other safekeeping repository described in subdivision A, and the records of the business association do not disclose the address to be inaccurate, the business association, meaning the casino in this case, shall make reasonable efforts to notify the owner by mail, or if the owner has consented to electronic notice, electronically, that the owner's contents or the proceeds of the sale of the contents will escheat to the state pursuant to this section. The business association shall give notice of not less than 6 months and not more than 12 months before the time the contents or the proceeds of the sale of the contents become reportable to the controller in advance in accordance with this chapter. So basically what it's saying is you need to give everybody 6 to 12 months notice. Can't be more than 12 months. You can't say, oh, we may close this in 3 years. It's got to be between 6 and 12 months that the box is going to close. Now, this could be read a different way, that as long as they don't report it as unclaimed property to the state of California, that they don't have to give you 6 months notice. But I'm reading it that basically they do have to give you 6 months notice if they're going to touch the box. But none of these places are doing it, and in fact, I have a relative that experienced the same thing with a bank, that they had to run down and get the contents of their box out and move it to a different box. And this wasn't at a casino, this was at a bank. And the bank pretended to have notified them 6 months prior when they had not. But that's exactly what these casinos have been doing. Hustler did it, and so did Commerce. Hustler, I even posted a copy of the envelope sent to me saying postmarked December 13th, and the letter was dated November 15th. And even that didn't come close to the 6 months. And all of them urgently acted like you had to come down there, like immediately get your stuff out. So Commerce basically did the same thing. They have a notice dated August 23rd posted in the room with the safe deposit boxes saying the Commerce Casino has made the decision to eliminate the usage of safe deposit boxes for long-term or permanent use. We're closing out our boxes in 2 phases. So if you've not been notified yet, either your address information we have on file is not up to date, or we have not sent you a letter. If you have an email address on file, we will attempt to contact you that way, which, by the way, was untrue. They didn't do it until after drilling people's boxes open. Our goal is to make this process as straightforward and simple as possible. You can assist by closing out your safe deposit box account and recovering your deposit in person with a return of your box key. If you've lost your key, your box will need to be drilled with you present, but the key you deposit will not be returned. The second phase is scheduled to begin within the next 30 days. Please continue to check your mail and email or close out your box and avoid the need to wait. That was August 23rd, 2024, except unless you went in to see that, you would not be aware of this, and people were not notified in many cases until late December, and yet their box was drilled not too long after that if they didn't come down and get it. Laughably, those who had their boxes drilled with very little notice not only had their stuff being stored by the manager of the casino cage there. From what I can tell, nobody had their contents stolen, so they were doing it honestly. I'll give them that. But I was told that people were not getting back their key deposits if their box was drilled, even though they weren't given proper notice, and even though the boxes will never be used again. So that's ridiculous. If you're not giving people proper notice to get down there, and then you drill their box prematurely, and they have their key, and they try to return their key, and you don't give them their $50 deposit back, and claim, well, it's because we had to drill your box. Well, you guys drilled the box prematurely. That's why you had to drill the damn box. And who cares if you drill the box, because you're not using them again. They're all going to go in the garbage anyway. Stupid. But that's what they were doing there. Unless people objected enough, they gave them the $50 back. But a lot of them just accepted the loss of the $50 and got their stuff back. But it was kind of disturbing, because people at Commerce were getting the contents of their box just, opened up and stored, and they have to wonder, okay, well, is my stuff all safe? Did anyone steal anything? And it's disturbing to have this stuff occur when you're not there. Now, I'll say a few things to be fair. Once again, there's no reports of anything having been stolen there. The head of the cage at Commerce, who is an executive there, personally managed the higher value boxes to make sure that things were handled right. And it was all done on video, all the drilling and the bagging of the stuff, with several people present. But that's not saying it still couldn't have been stolen or mishandled. So you just basically don't want your box drilled in any safe deposit scenario, if you can help it. And Commerce was premature in doing it. So anyway, if you haven't gotten your stuff out, you should do it very soon. Otherwise, they're going to report it to the state of California as unclaimed property, and then become a real pain in the ass. So that's it. There are no more safe deposit boxes in LA card rooms. Now, what if you want to play in an LA card room, but you don't want to drag a lot of cash in and be mugged in the parking lot? Well, good question. You can set up a player account there, which is free, and you basically just deposit money into it, and you can deposit and withdraw to it at any time, and there's no fee for it, and it's basically like the equivalent of writing a check to the casino. So let's say you deposit $20K on there, which you can do even with cash. I think you'll have to fill a CTR form out if you do more than $10K. Or you can wire money there. I'm not sure all the different ways to deposit to it, but you can deposit to it, and then when you're at the casino, you basically write the casino one of their pre-printed checks. I want to withdraw such and such money, and then they give you chips that were deducted from there. So if you want $5K worth of chips, and you had a $20,000 balance, they'll just bring you $5K worth of chips and make your balance now $15K. And if when you're done, let's say you win $2K and you have $7K, you don't want to take it home, you can put that $7K into the account, and then you'll have $22K. So it's almost like an online poker account, except it's live. So you can do that in place of the box. I personally think the boxes are better for this, but that's an alternative to having to bring cash in and out of the card room. Kenny Chesney will be at the Sphere with a residency. He is the first country music star to have a residency at the Sphere. The Sphere has been struggling, even though it looks cool. It has been struggling financially because people don't want to go in. They don't want to pay to go in. They don't want to pay for the shows there. I think the show they have in there, the standard show, that's like scenery in it, that could have been much more successful if it didn't turn into a preachy environmental message that even was annoying people on the left. Because apparently the first 20 minutes of that show are amazing. Like, people are really amazed by everything they see, and it's so cool with this 360-degree setting around you. It's just really nice. And someone who otherwise negatively reviewed the experience in the first 20 minutes of it brought him to tears. But then it turns into this in-your-face environmental message that's like really extreme, and then they don't show you as much scenery anymore. It just becomes a lecture, and people are like, what the fuck? I paid for scenery. I don't want a lecture. I want to see cool scenery. And you can combine the scenery with, I guess, some kind of message, but it's got to be subtle. It can't be beating you over the head with "we're destroying the earth." So people got turned off to it, and the word of mouth got bad. So that's been one problem there. But it's also just been people are not really interested in exploring and going inside. It's just like a cool thing you see from the outside. Oh, look at the sphere. Look what's on there now. Look what's on there now. That's free. They don't make any money that way. They've sold some ads on it, but it's just it hasn't been making money from what I'm hearing. Anyway, Kenny Chesney will have 12 performances at the Sphere starting in late May. As I said, the first country artist not just to have a residency, but to perform there at all. But we're not going to talk about his time at the Sphere, because I don't think you guys care about that. Maybe you're going to go see him, but I don't think you care about me talking about Kenny Chesney's time at the Sphere, do you? No, you don't. Let's talk about something more interesting. Is Kenny Chesney gay? And we're late in the show. Let's just go into a gossip form now. Is Kenny Chesney gay? Well, he says he's not. See, if he just said, hey, I'm gay, then it's not much of a story. But he has denied for 2 decades that he's gay. And he might be. Now, there are not many openly gay country music artists, and even fewer that are male. I think Shelley Wright came out as gay some years ago, but she was never a big star. She was like a brief star in the 2000s, and she's female. People are more accepting of that, especially the 2000s. But the country music space is just not that gay-friendly. Even if they're okay with you being gay, it's just country music fans just kind of have a hard time relating to be a fan of a gay male country music star. So that just hasn't gotten there yet. So if Kenny Chesney is gay, but otherwise was successful in what he was doing, I can understand why he'd stay in the closet. But nevertheless, we're going to talk about it anyway. Chesney is 56 right now. 20 years ago, he had a brief marriage to Renee Zellweger, which I'm sure you heard about, which was annulled. The annulment reason was listed as fraud. Now, many suggested that the fraud was that Zellweger discovered that Chesney was really gay, and she wanted out. But Chesney insisted that it was just a legal term which allowed them to get the annulment quickly, that it's just kind of a generic thing you say. You don't have to really prove any fraud. It's just the easiest thing to say to get it annulled. The full reason for the annulment was never given. He actually wrote a song about his romance with Zellweger. This is, of course, prior to the annulment, called You Had Me From Hello, but I guess she didn't because they annulled it. So at the time, as I said, there was a lot of gay rumors, and he was denying it. Some people thought he had gay mannerisms. Others pointed to the fact that he just didn't have much of a history with women, that maybe the Zellweger marriage was a way to calm those rumors. And keep in mind, this was in 2005, when the world was much less gay-friendly than now, and especially the country world was. So people were really thinking he was gay, and he denied it. But let's fast forward now to 2012. In 2012, Chesney got with a woman named Mary Nolan. Now, Mary Nolan, I don't know how old she is, but she looks a lot younger than him. I see a picture of them here. And she looks substantially younger than he is. Now, she can't be super young if the relationship started 13 years ago, but I have a feeling she was very young back then. Unless the picture I'm looking at is old. But she's a good deal younger than him. She's pretty. But the weird thing is, she has not really been seen with him anywhere except for a few major events. It's not like they're always going around town together, or they're seen at dinner together. It seems like she goes with him to major events where he needs to have someone with him. Like he just needs a date for an event. And that's pretty much it. In 13 years, she's barely been seen with him, and there's very little known about her. So some believe that she might be a beard, that it's just a marriage in name only, and they don't even live together. They don't do anything together. Maybe Mary Nolan's not even her real name. They're not married. So maybe this is just an alias of some woman who otherwise lives a life away from Kenny Chesney. Very weird. Like, wouldn't you think if you're a country music star like Chesney is, and he's been around now for over 20 years, wouldn't you think that if there's gay rumors dogging you that you feel are hurting your career, that you would want to be seen all the time with your girlfriend, that you'd go out of your way to be seen. And you don't have to give all the intimate details of your relationship. You don't need to start a Daniel Negreanu-style podcast and talk about everything that happened while you've been together and all the sexual details and all that. You don't have to do that. I mean, people find it interesting with Negreanu, but I'm saying that you don't have to go that far. You can still be secretive about the person you're with and details about them and about your relationship itself, but you can go out with them and be seen with them all the time. Like, wouldn't that kind of be important if you care about this, and it does seem like he cares about this? So let's think about something. Let's think about if Kenny Chesney is gay. What would he do? He said in 2005 that if he were gay, he would just admit it, but I don't believe that. I believe that would have been very harmful to his career in 2005. I think it would have fallen apart then. So I think at that point, if he was gay, that he had to commit to the lie that he was straight and stick to it. Because it wasn't just people were suspecting he didn't comment. He commented and said, no, I'm not gay. If I were, I'd admit it. So once you get that far, you're pretty much going to stick to, hey, I'm straight the rest of your life. At least as long as you care about your career. Especially in country music. So if you were gay, it would make sense to deny it when you keep getting presented with the rumors in 2005. And then you kind of just have to ride it out the rest of the time. But you can't ride it out for 2 decades when no women are ever seen with you. Then it looks weird. You can get so many women being a famous country star. Why would you have none if you're straight? So you find some female that you meet through somebody else, whatever it is, someone you think you can trust, who's willing to pretend she's your girlfriend and go with you to major events. And then otherwise you tell her, you go do your own thing. You don't marry her. It's very simple, and she gets to live her own life. Maybe even give her a fake name. And then you have a girlfriend you can point to having who doesn't have to actually commit to doing anything with you or having sex with you or living with you. That would be a good thing to do if you wanted to be gay on the down low and have a beard girlfriend but not burden the girlfriend too much. That would be the way to do it. So my guess is, yes, he is gay. And I'm not even judging him, because if I had his career and these gay rumors came up in 2005, I would have denied it too. It would just make sense to do. You don't want to kill your career that's going well by saying, oh yeah, I'm gay, and then people tune out. So who knows? But it's not important. I'm just saying it because it's entertaining for this show. If he were to say, you know what, guys, I'm tired of living this lie. Yeah, I'm gay. It wouldn't make me think any different about his music. It wouldn't make me any less desiring to see him in concert. And you may say, well, Druff, have you ever really seen him in concert? And the answer is yes, I have. One time. It was before the gay rumors, but that's just when it happened to be. But I'll tell you, it's kind of a little bit of an interesting story. I may have told it on radio before, but I'll tell you again anyway. It's not a very long story. In 2001, he was not as big of a star, and he was opening for Tim McGraw, who was the bigger star. And at this particular tour stop, he was at Glen Helen Pavilion in Devore, California. Now, where is that? If you drive between LA and Vegas, you have passed it. It is on the 15, just as you connect from the 210 and go north, or if you've connected from the 10 or another freeway, it's kind of around where the 210 meets the 15, and it's on the eastern side, Glen Helen Pavilion. It's in Devore, Devore, California. I'm not sure if it's still called Glen Helen Pavilion. It's been a while since I've been there, but that's what it was called back then, in 2001. Now, I was aware of this concert, but I wasn't looking to go to it or anything. I was a fan of country music, and I still am, but I just hadn't gone to any country music concerts before. And I don't know, I just didn't make any effort to do it, though I wasn't opposed to going to one. So I was in a chat room at a time, and a girl appeared there and asked if there were any country music fans. So I said I was a country music fan, and she opened up a private chat window with me. And she said, well, I have 2 tickets to the McGraw-Chesney concert, but, I can't go I can't use the second one because my friend was sick. And I'm like, shit, this is a scam. Okay, so I'm supposed to buy the other ticket that her, quote, friend was going to use, and it's probably some kind of scam. So I said, oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm not looking to buy any tickets, but, thanks anyway. And she said, no, you don't understand. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I don't want you to pay for these tickets. I'm going to take you. It's free. Like, the tickets weren't free, but it's free to you. I'm going to take the ticket my friend was going to use, and I'm just going to bring you. Would you like to come? I'm like, really? You're going to give me the ticket for free and take me? She says, well, I'm not going to take you. The only thing I ask of you is that you drive, because I don't really like driving, and I don't live anywhere near Devore. So I said, where do you live? It happened she lived very close to me. I was in Redondo Beach at the time, and she lived, I think, in Hermosa Beach. She was pretty close to me. So I forgot where we met, but it was very convenient to carpool. And she said, she'd just like me to drive in my car because she just doesn't like driving. So I said, oh, yeah, cool. So, all right. Sounded good to me. Free concert, and yeah, I got to drive, but it sounds fair. So I drove, and I paid for parking, and I wasn't even that curious about what she looked like. I didn't really care. I was interested in going to the concert itself. She was fairly close to my age, a few years younger than me. Remember, I was a young man at the time in 2001. I was 29. So she was probably 26 or something. And she told me she was, I think, Guatemalan. And I was surprised when she told me that. I was sure she was going to be white, given it was country music. But no, she was a Guatemalan into country music. She did not have an accent. She was born in the U.S. I didn't even ask her for a picture. I don't think she asked me for one. I had a cowboy hat that I hadn't worn in a long time, and I said, I'll wear it to this concert. So I tried to put on the cowboy hat, which I had last worn in 1988 when I was 16 years old, and it did not fit. I didn't know my head had grown that much since 1988 when I was 16, but apparently it had. I'd only grown like 4 inches since then. And it wasn't a matter that I got fat. In fact, I was like 40 pounds less than I am today. Still a lot heavier than 88. But it wasn't from getting fat. It was just my head got bigger. I hadn't realized that until then. But yes, my head had substantially grown between age 16 and adulthood. So the cowboy hat did not fit at all. And I said, oh, never mind. So anyway, I pick her up, and she brings me a cowboy hat and says, I have this around. I don't know why she had a male cowboy hat, but she did, and said, would you like to put it on? And I said, oh, yeah, thank you. I was going to wear a cowboy hat myself, but the one I had doesn't fit anymore. So I put it on. She said, oh, this looks good. Oh, you look so good in it. And I could already tell she was flirting with me, and she was acting like she was attracted to me. Now, she was a fairly pretty girl, but not really my physical type. And I was thinking about this as I was with her there, because she was very, very nice and pleasant to be around. I really liked her company. And I was thinking, it's too bad I'm not more attracted to this girl physically, because she would be the type I would enjoy as a girlfriend. But she's not really my type. It's too bad. And she wasn't ugly. She just wasn't my type. I didn't tell her that. And I was happy to go to the concert with her, and she was very nice, and I really liked being around her. She was fun, she was soft-spoken, she was sweet, just very easy to get along with, just really a personality I couldn't say enough good things. So anyway, the tickets themselves weren't a lot to write home about. They were in a shitty location way in the back on the lawn. But whatever, they were free, so the price was right. Kenny Chesney did a good job with Kenny Chesney did a good job with the opening songs, and then he gave way to Tim McGraw, who also performed well. Given that this girl was not really my type, again, she was fairly pretty, so it wasn't like I was with an ugly girl there, but I didn't want to make any moves on her. I didn't want to lead her on. So I was happy to have a good time with her there and enjoy the concert. I didn't want to act like I was really into her and then not call her again. So I didn't want to do that. So I was not making any moves on her or trying to hold her hand or lean on her, nothing like that. But I didn't have to because she was doing it to me. She was first leaning on me, then she took my hand to hold my hand during the concert, and then at some point during it, she kissed me. Now, all this was like her doing it to me. And again, I was thinking, it's too bad she's not my type. Otherwise, this would be great. Anyway, she told me that I was her type, she revealed. I didn't ask her this, but she revealed to me that her type was tall white guys that were near her age. That she wasn't into other Guatemalans, that she wanted to date tall white guys that were, relatively close to her age. So, that was me. I was tall, I was white, near her age, so I guess I checked the boxes. Anyway, at the end of the evening when I dropped her off, she kissed me again. She told me she had a really good time. She told me she found me to be very attractive and that she really wanted to see me again. And I thought, man, I wish I was more attracted to her. I just kept thinking that. But of course, I didn't say that out loud. She was very nice. There's no way I'd say something like that. So I said, no, I had a very good time, and I'll definitely contact you. And I sent her like one or two more messages through the chat interface, so I didn't just look like a jerk who ghosted after the free concert tickets, but then I kind of faded away, and that was that. And to this day, that's the only country music concert I've ever been to in my life. So that was my Kenny Chesney experience. More about the Guatemalan girl than it was Kenny Chesney. But I hope you enjoyed the story. I may have told it before. I don't know. It wasn't quite enough to make a Druffy Time Theater out of, but enough to make a radio segment out of in the middle of a Kenny Chesney segment. 775-FRAUD-55, 775-372-8355 is a number to call or text if you like. I want to talk about CNF. What is CNF? CNF is also known as a concession fee, and you may have seen it on your food bill if you dined at one of various Las Vegas Strip restaurants. Now, most of them still don't have CNF, fortunately. But what is CNF? CNF is an extra fee tacked onto the bill that is not a tax and you don't have to pay, but looks like you have to pay, so most people pay it. It is something that they just tack on to generate extra money. If you ask the management about it, they'll tell you that it's due to increased rent or increased costs, and they just have to throw it on there to be able to survive, but that is bullshit. The actual answer is deception and increased profit. The reason they don't raise the prices at these places instead of put the CNF in is because they don't want to scare away diners who might walk by, see a menu, and go, up, too expensive for what I want, and then keep walking. They also don't want people who are in the restaurant to order less because they think the bill's going to get too high if they order as much food as otherwise they'd like. So they want to make the prices appear to be lower than they really are, and then you get the bad news when the bill comes. They do print the CNF percentage at the bottom of the menu in the fine print, often it's as high as 5%. And it's something hard to see, and it's a place on the menu you normally wouldn't look. You're usually not reading the fine print at the very bottom of any menu you're reading, right? I mean, occasionally you might, but that's not where your eyes are going to go to. So that's what they're hoping. They're hoping you don't even know it's there until you end up paying the bill, and then if you ask, what is this, they point to it on the menu, and you feel stupid for not having read the fine print at the bottom of the menu, as if you should be reading that. Is the CNF a tip? No. None of the CNF goes to the server. It all goes to the restaurant. So do not feel bad about taking it off. It will not affect the server's tip. CNF is sometimes called a concession fee. Either way, it's the same thing. And it's only quasi-legal. The reason it's quasi-legal is because this has never been challenged, to my knowledge, in court. They do have to disclose any fee like that, but the question is, what level of disclosure do they have to give? So is it fair that they can print one price on the menu and then put in the fine print the CNF is such and such percent, and that's going to be added to the bill, and then force you to pay it? Can they do that legally? Some believe they can't. Some believe that challenge would fail in court for the restaurant as far as getting that upheld. So I guess we'll see one day. But so far, there has not been a lawsuit brought about this, but at the same time, they don't want one. So it's kind of morphed into a negative checkoff scam. A negative checkoff scam I've talked about on this show before, but I'll remind you what it is. It is a term I invented about 30-something years ago when I was in college. A negative checkoff scam is a form of a scam where the victim is instantly refunded if he complains, but the scammer counts on a healthy percentage of people, or sometimes the vast majority of people, not complaining. Negative checkoff scams are very powerful for that exact reason, because the people who will be loud about it are instantly made whole and they go away. And the people who either won't notice or are afraid to say anything will get scammed and they'll never make any noise. So this way, you still scam a lot of people, and those people always remain quiet, and those that don't remain quiet, well, they get refunded and they go, well, I'm made whole, okay, I'm gone, and they don't bother you anymore. So it's very powerful, a negative checkoff scam. So this is a form of a negative checkoff scam because all of the restaurants I'm about to list to you, to my knowledge, will take this off very quickly if you complain. You just have to complain. So you don't have to start a big fight. You just have to say, I don't want to pay this. I know, I don't care if it's at the bottom of the menu. I don't want to pay this. This was not the posted price. You can even bullshit and say you didn't see on the bottom of the menu until just now. You didn't see it at the time you're ordering. And they will take it off. But which restaurants charge the CNF? Well, to my knowledge, this is the list of the CNF charging restaurants. Cabo Wabo Cantina in Planet Hollywood, Hex at Paris, Beer Park at Paris, Alexa's Bar at Paris, Chayo Mexican Kitchen in the Link Promenade, Flights in the Miracle Mile Shops, Blondie's in the Miracle Mile Shops, Dick's Last Resort in the Mandalay Bay, S-Bar at Mandalay Bay, and Cassie Beach House in Virgin. So most of these are Caesars properties, but the last three are not. I'm also not sure if Flights or Blondie's is directly associated with Caesars because it's in the Miracle Mile Shops, but whatever. Those are the ones that are charging the CNF, and all of them will take it off if you complain. You are not required by law to pay that. You can just refuse to pay it, and they will back down. Should you feel embarrassed or like a cheapskate to object to this, even if you can remove it, should you? Or is it shady of you to do if you know it's there? If you see at the bottom of the menu they're charging it, is it shitty of you then to remove it because you were aware before you ordered? No, it's not shitty of you because this is a scam. This is them attempting to cheat everyone else who doesn't see it. So the bottom line is, if the posted price is such and such amount for whatever food you're getting, that should be it. There should not be something that's tacked on additionally that most people would not be aware of. Druff's rule of fair charges states that any charge that the majority of people would not be aware of at the time is a shady charge. Anything that's non-standard needs to be very clearly disclosed, not buried in the fine print. And I'm not talking about taxes or things that you would expect to be there even if you don't know the exact amount. I'm not even talking about like local assessments, like anything that they're not going to gain from, fine. Like anything that's just charged and passed on to the city or county or state, that's a different story. I'm talking about anything they keep. Needs to be disclosed if it's non-standard. And the CNF is definitely non-standard. Most people don't question it because they assume it must be some kind of local tax, and they just they may grumble about it, but they won't pay it. And then if it pointed to how it's at the bottom of the menu, that's when people just assume it's their fault. Well, I didn't read everything. I got to learn to read more. My fault. Okay, here's your 5%. No, don't. Don't reward places for doing this. You should punish places for trying to trick people. And the way you punish them is saying, I'm not going to pay it. You should have put this on the menu price. If you made the prices 5% higher on your menu, then I pay the whole bill. If you try to deceive me, so I come in here thinking the prices are cheaper or order more food because the prices are cheaper, and then you tack 5% at the end, no, I'm not paying it. Even if I see it beforehand, I'm not paying it. You try to pull that game and I'm not paying it. Completely ethical to refuse because they are trying to bury it in the fine print. Notice it's not big print saying, attention, it's extra 5%. Make sure you understand this before you order. They put it in places that are not prominent the whole thing's a trick, so don't pay it. You don't have to feel gauche or cheap by refusing to pay it. That's just you standing up for not being ripped off. You saying, no, this is not okay. Be upfront with your prices. Stop this deceptive bullshit. That's the message it sends. That's a good message. Longtime Las Vegas comedian Cook E Jarr has passed away at the age of 73. Obviously, that's not his birth name. Cook E Jarr was a fairly unique Las Vegas-based comedian. He performed between 1969 and 2015, actually 2017, not 15, in Las Vegas. He did have periods where he wasn't performing, but for most of that time he was performing in Vegas. There was actually a T-shirt printed in 2017 that showed all the places he performed in those years. And he was a mostly liked performer. He was someone who made up for lack of talent with uniqueness and kind of just realness, just kind of a guy who you never knew what he was going to say. So he wasn't like the most talented performer, but people felt he was interesting and unique, and a lot of people liked him for that reason. He never ended up with a really big act. I don't think he ever made a whole lot of money, but he was always just kind of there. And I was aware of him, I just never saw him. And that's one of these things like when they die, you go, oh, I kind of should have seen him. Here's a little clip of a performance from 2009. So he did a lot of things. Yeah, he sang, he told jokes, he got the audience involved. Some weird things he would do that people found to be endearing would be like he would interrupt his Monday night performances with complaints or cheers based upon whatever his Monday night football bets were. So he actually would stop and go, hold on. Oh, wow, who's winning in this game? Oh, great, I had that side. I don't know if it was real or just an act. I don't know if that was just something to kind of shock the audience that the guy's going to stop his performance on Monday night to ask which football team is winning. But that was the type of thing he did. It was the type of unexpected stuff that you would at first think is cheesy or unprofessional, but then kind of realize it's part of the whole thing. It's part of the whole experience with him. So as I said, I never saw it, but this is what I read about it. And overall, people liked the guy. R.E. Dietz of VegasCasinoTalk.com, a regular poster there, he wrote, "Oh boy, this one hits home. I'm very, very sad to have lost this guy. My compadres and I, who were from the same neck of the woods, brought him tasty cakes as a tribute to the last couple of times we saw him at Paris in the lounge." That must have something to do with his performance. He was a fabulous old-school guy. He was truly one of a kind, just a real piece of Las Vegas Americana. I love this guy and his career. And a lot of people felt that way about him. The places he performed, I will list to you. It's kind of an interesting list. In 1969 at Caesar's Palace, which is still standing today, obviously. Most of the towers you see today didn't exist yet, but it did exist, Caesar's Palace in 69. He was there for a long time. In 82, he moved over to the Sands, which is now the Venetian. The Sahara he performed at in 83. The Maxim in 84. You guys know where the Maxim was and what is there now. The Maxim eventually lost its gaming license and then eventually became the Western Casuarina on Flamingo. It's not on the Strip. It's close to the Strip, but it's not on the Strip. It's on Flamingo and Koval, the Maxim. But it's now the Westin. The Dunes, which got wrecked and is now the Bellagio. In 85 is where he performed. Starting in 87, he performed at the Silver Slipper, which was wrecked and never rebuilt. In 88, he performed, starting in 89, he performed at the El Rancho. The El Rancho was interesting because it got wrecked, and then there were a lot of different rumors as to what was going to take its place, and they never came to fruition. And finally, it kind of did, because it's now a part of the site of the Fontainebleau. 1990, he performed at Bourbon Street. Remember Bourbon Street in the 80s, in the 90s? Well, that's now gone. It's just a parking lot now. He wasn't long at Bourbon Street. Then he moved over to Palace Station, which is still standing today. Then 1990, again, he moved again to Bally's, which has since been rebranded to Horseshoe, but it's the same building. 1991, he moved over to Hacienda, which got wrecked. I'm sure you remember Hacienda if you went to Vegas in the 80s. But Hacienda is now the Mandalay Bay, since getting wrecked. In 93, the Tropicana, which stood for a very long time, but just got wrecked in October of 2024. He performed there in 93. In 94, he performed at the Continental. You may not be familiar with the Continental, but it got rebranded to Terribles and then to Silver Sevens. That's what it is right now. In 1995, he performed at MGM Grand. That is the present MGM Grand, not what Bally's was once called. In 1997, he performed at the Rio. In 98, he moved over to Casino Royale, which is still around. In 1999, he moved to Harrah's. And, of course, that's still there. And I don't know how long he was at Harrah's, but starting in 2011, he performed at Bill's Gambling Hall, which was the former Barbary Coast, which is now the Cromwell, which is renovated and rebranded. And the final place he performed was Paris. And he was there for 2 years and left in 2017. I was surprised to see that he was given a gig at Paris. Bill's Gambling Hall, yeah, it was a Caesars property also, but I was surprised Paris in 2015 gave him a gig, because by that point, he was already well over 60, and I just thought Paris would want more of a major act there than him. But he probably knew someone who got him that gig, and he kept it for those 2 years. I don't know if he left or if they fired him. I don't know how many of these where he just left on his own or if he got fired. Anyway, there was a discussion on Vegas Casino Talk that it kind of spawned from there, that the corporate types in Vegas nowadays don't really appreciate Vegas nostalgia. And he was definitely a piece of Vegas nostalgia. But that in general they don't appreciate Vegas nostalgia, and these casinos are all becoming more and more generic looking, and the memorable pieces of them are being taken out. Good examples at Caesars properties include the removal of Cleopatra's Barge, which was there for a long time. Cleopatra's Barge in Caesars Palace, which is kind of near where Nobu is right now. But Cleopatra's Barge was a very iconic-looking lounge with an actual barge with a statue of Cleopatra sticking out. Something very memorable there. It had been in operation since 1970. It wasn't an original item in Caesar's Palace. It was originally called Nero's Nook before being converted into Cleopatra's in 70. But it remained for 53 years, and it was very recognizable as a piece of Caesar's. It's an interesting old-school piece of Caesar's. And then for whatever reason, in 2023, they shut it down and then reopened the same space as Caspian's Lounge, which is just a generic, boring, wannabe upscale lounge. So that's really sucking the personality of that space. Like, who wants to see another upscale lounge in Caesars? Like, who really wants that? That's not memorable. Anything they're doing in Caspian's Lounge, they could have done at Cleopatra's Barge, but Cleopatra's Barge was very memorable and had been there for 53 years. So that's what I mean. Is some idiot accountant said, I think Cleopatra's Barge is too tacky and it's getting too old, and rather than just spruce it up a bit, why don't we just wreck it and just put an upscale lounge that looks a lot more modern? Get the younger crowd in there. And they're not getting it. People like these things. People come back, Cleopatra's Barge, I've seen that for so long. That's cool. Let's see a show there. That's what people will think. They're not going to be excited by just a generic lounge in its place. And another example that I like to cite was Harrah's just destroying the Buck, Winnie, and Chip statue that was very memorable. Which, yes, it was a tacky statue. It's of this older couple named Buck and Winnie. Get it? Buck like he has bucks, and Winnie like she won. And they're holding all this cash, and it's falling out of their purse and their suitcase and all this, and then they have a dog named Chip. You get it again, Chip, because it's all things like casino related. So it's Buck, Winnie, and Chip, and they're both looking like they're from somewhere in Texas or somewhere in the South. And Buck has a cowboy hat on, and Winnie's wearing a big tacky ring. It's supposed to be kind of like a white trashy couple with their dog that came to Harrah's and won so much money it's just falling everywhere, all the cash. But it was a cute, kind of interesting statue. And you remember it. You walk by it and go, oh, I remember this statue. And it was there for a very long time. And it was kind of in a walkway, like right in the middle of a walkway. It wasn't blocking anything. There was really nothing to do with the space. It didn't take up very much room. So why not just leave it there? It's not even like Harrah's is an upscale hotel. So anyway, they just decided one day they're killing it. No good reason. They just killed it. Now it's a blank space there. That's what I mean. The corporate guys really have no soul in modern Vegas. They really don't. Like, sure, the Buck Winnie statue was tacky, but it was also the most memorable thing in Harrah's, so why remove it? You think people are going to not come back to Harrah's because they see that? It's the opposite. They'll see that, they'll remember it, they'll remember having seen it before. They'll remember the times they were there before. It's just one of the things that reminds you they're in Vegas. And if they haven't seen it before, it's got some uniqueness and interest and character to it. And Harrah's isn't even a place that they have to worry about being snooty and upscale. It's supposed to be kind of like a working class type of venue. So what are they even doing? Oh my. And like, I haven't heard a single person say, oh, I'm glad that statue's gone. But I've heard a lot of people say that's just annoying to see. There's a blank space there where the statue once sat. It's not like a space they could do anything with. It's in a walkway. So why remove it? So those are examples of just removing old school Vegas stuff. I think E Jarr was like an old school Vegas thing in a way. Well, that's it. Got through everything. I hope you enjoyed Poker Fraud Alert Radio's return. See, it shows you it's not really dead, and I did a long show for you. Gonna take a nap, get up and watch the Super Bowl, decide if I want to bet on anything. I imagine most of you will catch this in the archives. We didn't have a tremendous live listenership, but it's to be expected. Is this going to be a two-parter or a one-parter in the archives? That's a good question. It kind of feels like a one-parter because this went about a little under 7 hours when I take out the break. And then the editing will take out a little bit more. So we would be probably 6.5 or something is my guess. And it's kind of hard to split into two parts. It's kind of right in that zone where splitting into two parts feels like it's too short. But one part feels like it's going to be too long to edit. I don't know. I do want to get something to you fairly fast, though, because it's been 7 weeks. The wait has been long enough. We had 17 topics this week, 18 if you count the topic about where Poker Fraud Alert Radio has been. There's a lot to do, but at least the last topics I sped through. The long topics were at the beginning. That was by design, so I don't run out of steam and don't have the energy for the long stuff. When will the next show be? That's a good question. I don't know. I don't want to promise something I'm not going to deliver on. It won't be 7 weeks, though. It'll be sooner than 7 weeks. I'll give you that. If you haven't been paid yet for the Robert Gray Memorial Free Roll, you will be paid soon, so please DM me Dan Druff with a space, Dan space Druff on the Poker Fraudler forum to claim your prize if you're one of the winners. Or text me, whatever. Good day, good night, whatever. Shalom.